And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stormkeep Live. I'm here today with Carl from Season of War. You guys may know him from that channel. I've known him for longer than that. Carl and I used to play a lot of games together at X Planet Games in Mississauga, both Underworlds and Age of Sigmar, and we've been gaming together for a long time. So it's welcome to the show, I guess is what people would say. It's still weird. Feels weird to be doing a show. How did you get over that feeling?
I don't think I have still. I ramble a lot, so if I ramble, just let me know. But yeah, we've known each other for quite some time. I think I met you when I first got into miniature wargaming in general. So you've known me for the entire of my Age of Sigmar career.
I wasn't into it that much longer than you then.
Yeah,
because that was what, like 2018, 2017, something like that.
First GHB I think was when I walked in.
Okay, yeah, pretty much right when I started playing Age of Sigmar. Before that, I was just collecting Seraphon and rolling dice randomly. I wasn't really playing the game, right? It was just random stuff. So here we are. Here we are, 5 years later, and we're still
content creators, quote unquote.
Oh boy. So just want to give a shout out to our official sponsor, Torchlight Games and Hobbies in Burlington. They are Burlington, Ontario in Canada. They're a great store, and they are sponsoring our painting contest. The subject this time is the Night Judicator. We do a painting contest every month, and we pick the top prizes, or we pick the winners based on, whatever criteria we feel like at the time. Last time we did Annihilators. This time we're doing the Night Judicator. So if you want to join the painting contest, I know some people were saying they missed out, they didn't know. Usually we announce these at the end of live streams, and I thought, maybe people would know more if we put it at the start of the live stream instead. So we're trying that. And so if you're interested, there's a Discord link in the description. People usually point down, right? Because that's how YouTube works. The things are underneath it.
Here somewhere, wherever we are.
Yeah, so check the description for a link to the Discord. There's a channel there called Painting Night Judicator. Put up your entry with a timestamp, and you have a chance to win fabulous prizes. To be determined. We're still working out what we're going to give away this time, but they're great. So, and if you're in the Ontario area, that's hard to say, check out Torchlight. They're a great store, great guys, really friendly, and let them know that we sent you.
Yeah. Quick question about the painting contest. Does that include the Gryph-hounds?
Yeah. Night Judicator and 2 Gryph-hounds. It doesn't have to be strictly the Games Workshop model. We're not affiliated with Games Workshop in any way. So if you have like a cool conversion or kit bash or even like a reasonable proxy, something that, if somebody looked across the table and said, hey, that's a Night Judicator, I know that, then feel free to submit that too. Last time we had some guys doing some 3D printed Annihilators that looked really cool. So anything works. So today we are talking about Grots Gone Wild, which is a GT in Welland, Ontario. Welland is somewhat known in this community, and I'd say only in this community. There's not really much else to know about Welland unless you play Warhammer. But that's where Mini Wargaming is located, and they have a great space out there. They renovated it a few years back to expand it, and we're going to be playing a GT there. I actually didn't know you would be there until I saw like all the names pop up, because I joined pretty late. I just saw, hey, there's a GT and I'm free that weekend, and there's a spot. Okay, go. And that was like a week ago. So I went through and I looked through all the names. I'm like, is that the Carl I know? Oh, cool. Let's talk to him and get his opinion on these lists. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We are going to look through, time permitting, every single list. It's about 30 something players, 36 I think.
30, yeah.
About that. And so time is scarce. Let's jump into it.
Sure.
And we're just going to do these alphabetically. They're not ranked in any way. It's just player name alphabetically through the BCP app. I've transcribed their lists here. I've double checked them, but there still could be some kind of error, but we're going to just talk about them as I have them in slides here. So this first one here is a Hallowed Knights battle regiment with Gardas, with a whole bunch of Vindictors, and then with one big shooting hammer of Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows, and then 2 small melee hammers of Fulminators and Stormdrake Guard. I could talk a lot about this one because it's Stormcast.
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of what your opinion. I know the player himself, so I'll kind of talk about the player after you kind of break down his list.
Sure. So typically when I see Gardas with a bunch of shield wall units and then shooting behind it, to me that says this is a castle approach, especially because it's using Fulminators. They're a mid-range counter-punch unit for the most part. They're not fast enough to compete with other fast units, so like you're typically either hoping to get lucky with 9-inch charges from Translocation or Deep Strike, or you're just using them to like counterattack once the enemy comes to you, and you force the enemy to come to you with the Vanguard Raptors, right? That's a pretty solid core. That's a tried and true strategy that's worked for Stormcast for a long time. That's an archetype we in the Stormkeep Discord we call that the Hallowed Strike, which is a remnant of Anvil Strike, which was Aether Strike, and it's just a long legacy of names. Guardus protects everything, and typically this would be instead of what this list has done is it split its hammers into Fulminators and Guard or Stormdrake Guard, which typically you'd see one or the other. You wouldn't see both because 2 Fulminators isn't really enough on their own to kill like the big things that you really need to kill, especially if they're save stacking and then you just need weight of dice. 2 Fulminators won't get it done. Storm Drakes on the other also are kind of a low damage unit. They're not like super high damage. So this list is kind of trying both things. It's trying to get the speed from Storm Drakes and the damage from Fulminators. But because it's kind of mixing both ways, it's not fully going in one direction. I think that opens up a lot of weaknesses. Because we're talking about a GT, we're talking competitive lists, so I think that presents a lot of weaknesses. And then it goes heavy on Vindictors, which is interesting because I figured if you're going this many Vindictors with Hallowed Knights, you should be going Stormkeep. But the problem with Stormkeep Allegiance, of course, is you can't have Scions to protect your Raptors, which means every other list that shoots will just shoot you immediately. Right?
Yep. And it is a 2-drop, interestingly enough, not a 1-drop. And so in matchups that have 1-drop in shooting, which most shooting armies are nowadays, I think that's why he's gone Scions to protect his Raptors.
Yeah, the drop conversation is interesting. I know you looked ahead on the slides and you saw like there's a little breakdown chart of how many drops people are going. Because I like that data. I'm really interested in how many drops people are using. Battle Regiment is really, really common. Single drop lists are I would say they're the plurality. They're not the majority, but they're the plurality. So it's either like you go 1-drop or you go like 9+. And then people doing 2 drops are just trying to beat the 9 drops, but they still get beat by the 1 drops. So it's like, are you really accomplishing anything by going 2 drops instead of 9? Like you could have Warlord, you could have Hunters, you could have all this extra stuff in your list. So it seems wasteful to me. But that's a longer conversation, which we can get into at the end. This one in particular, going 2 drops opens it up to a lot of abuse. Like this pretty much has to put the Raptors in reserve, right? Which means you're not getting your Thunderbolt Volley first turn. What it's hoping to do is outdrop somebody and then double turn. I think that's what this list is trying to do. And there's just a lot of points of failure for that, right? Like I was playing a practice game with Stormcast Mirror the other day. Spoilers, I'm going to be playing Stormcast at this event. I was playing it with James, and he pretty much had this, except he had 4 Drakes and less Liberators. I think he had like an Incantor and a few other things. And I ended up outdropping him, and I forced him to go first. And I was able to just absorb the charge from the Drakes and the shooting from the Raptors. And then when I counterattacked, I was able to kill all of his Raptors immediately. He got no value from Thunderbolt Volley. He did roll low on long strikes at the dice game, so But it's just what I'm saying is not that this is like a bad idea. It's just like there's a lot of points of failure that can occur here. Like if you don't get the double, you're in a really bad spot against any list that can shoot. So
I would agree. Yeah. Anthony's a little bit of a newer player in terms of AOS. The reason why I think he has a lot of Vindictors is he collected the starter set, multiple starter sets, and just traded it, and which is why he has so many Vindictors. He's been slowly moving his list from basically when he started all Vindictors to more of these hammer pieces. So this is kind of the latest iteration. The last time I saw him, there was more Vindictors. So I think he's slowly moving towards the correct way, if there is a correct way of building this type of list. But he's just kind of getting it painted up as he goes on, not kind of rushing things.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's the way to do it, especially if you're a newer player. I never suggest people like dive in and try to buy too many models and then they're left with a huge backlog of shame.
Yep, for sure.
Coach is in the chat. We did a 3-hour conversation about collecting Stormcast, and that was pretty much the takeaway. Was like, don't jump in feet first. Like, take your time. Yep. The slower, the better. You don't want to get burnt out, especially because it's an expensive hobby. But yeah, You mentioned there's like the best way to do this. It's not so much like the correct or best. It's more like when you get this kind of list approach, like this play style, you kind of optimize certain pieces out of it, right? Like
Yep.
there's no need to have 10 Vindictors because they're still gonna die to like a Maw Crusher or pigs charging them.
Hmm.
They don't really count as that many bodies. They're huge models, but like it's hard to fit them all on an objective if people are screening them properly. So like
Yep.
the benefit of running 10 Vindictors instead of 5 Vindictors and then having some points to spend on something else. It's like the points are usually better, especially if you have 2 blocks of Vindictors like this. You could get 2 more Fulminators by swapping out 10 Vindictors.
For sure.
And that just works better, right? Because suddenly instead of just having 2 Fulminators charging a Gargant, you have 4, which is actually enough to kill one, unless they're double save stacked or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like the adage, the jack of all trades, master of none. That's kind of the issue with this list, where it's trying to do everything but doesn't accomplish everything to the same level as other lists would
Yeah.
potentially.
And because Age of Sigmar is so fast, there's armies that are so fast and armies that are so lethal. Midway approaches typically don't work. I'd say like
Yep.
the one thing that's broken the mold really is Stormdrake Guard. They're kind of a midway approach in every way. Like in terms of defense and offense, they're not the
Mhm.
greatest unit. They're very expensive for what they do, but they're fast. They're so
Mhm.
fast, right? And because they're like skewed heavily defensively, I'd say, and they're fast and they do enough damage, like that's the one what other examples are there of like jack of all trades units that really work in this game?
Not nothing really pops in my mind because the Stormdrake Guard not only has the speed and the melee output and the defense is still, it can potentially spike on the shooting as well
Oh yeah,
and
that's
take things out. So I don't think there's not really a generalist unit I can think off the top of my head that presents the same problem that Stormdrake Guard do.
yeah. They're the exception, I would say, not the exception
Yep.
that proves the rule because I don't like that phrase, but they're definitely an exception, right? Like in general, you want specialized units. If you have a choice between like 5 Vindictors are gonna take a charge and die because they're just gonna die, you can't stop it, or you can put 5 Liberators there and have 15 points left over in your list.
Yep.
The Liberators are always better, not because like they do something better, but because they're just more efficient at that same role, right? So when
For
you
sure.
when you start looking at the game in that way, it's like, well, instead of spending points on 25 Vindictors, he could have 15 Liberators and then spend get another support hero, maybe a Battle Mage, and more Fulminators, and it just flows in that direction, right? So it's
For
it's
sure.
not like this is bad. It's not like putting Vindictors in your list makes it worse. It's just not optimal.
Yeah. Or he could just split the Vindictors to fives and be more annoying. And again, as you said, put in a Stormkeep, and at that point, then you're counting for a lot of
Yeah.
bodies.
Then he would break his battle regiment, which is a whole other thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, 1 drops are so important right now, and that's kind of leading
Yep.
people into doing like big reinforced blocks instead of MSU style approach.
Correct.
Because if the game is determined by who doubles on turn 1 to 2, then battle regiment's a huge deal, right?
Yep.
I would like that to not be the norm. I'd like the game to play out to 5 rounds every single time, but
I would agree. Yeah.
it's the way it
The
is,
one to
right?
two is the most important, I think, die roll currently,
Yeah,
kind of with how armies are designed and that sort of thing.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go on a whole tangent about that, but we got a lot of
Yeah.
lists to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're looking at just the choices for enhancements and whatnot. It's a very typical loadout here for the Relictor. He's got High Priest to reroll Translocation, which is a really, really powerful ability. It's like defining of Stormcast armies to have Translocation. And then he took an Arcane Tome and picked Celestial Blades to see. This is where the optimization comes in, right? Like if you're running Celestial Blades, what do you put it on in this list? There's no big melee unit that you want to get a whole lot of
Yeah.
dice rolls with.
If you had 4 Fulminators, it would work much better.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
You could cast Mystic
Or
Shield
Forge
too.
Guard.
You
Yeah.
could cast Mystic Shield too, but again, what are you putting Mystic Shield on? Because 2 Stormdrakes are. It's a lot harder to kill 4 Stormdrakes than 2, right?
Yep.
It's so much harder. It's crazy. So yeah, it's a little split down the middle, and it needs to pick a side a little bit more. I also noticed that one thing he could have done here is instead of running 2 squads of 10 Vindictors, I think a squad of 15 and then 2 squads of 5 would have been better. Just because 15, you could stack Mystic Shield, all out defense, if you don't get roared, right? But that seems better to me than like 2 squads of 10, because a squad of 10
Yeah.
is still just gonna die to most things in the game.
Yeah, and it has a huge footprint, and you want Gardas to be sort of kind of near both blocks, so then you become this 20 block that's split into two, that's close by Gardas, or one that's way off onto the distance that doesn't have the 5-up, and you just pick on that unit anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, coach is saying counterpoint. The opponent won't have a primary target with two options, and there's value to that for sure. That's I don't want to spoil it. But that's kind of the whole point of my list that I submitted here is giving my opponent too many choices, and there is a lot of value in that. Like right now, we're kind of in a mindset of like people have 5 to 10 units max in their list, right? So if you can Thunderbolt Volley kill one of the units and then just shoot and kill another unit, they're down to 3 to 7, right? Like it's you're just have way less choices strategically, and that's the power of like early game aggressive attacks. So that's where everything's heading right now, right? So there is value in that, but I think in this case, 10 Vindictors just don't cut it. I think you could take 15. I think you could put them in the way of a thing that's very scary. Like even Maw Crushes, unless they're fast on, then they still have a defined path that they're trying to charge, and you can put your Vindictors in that path on deployment.
Yep.
And the 15 might survive, right? Without Hunters, it's a little bit tougher because that stomp is going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 15 Vindictors with +2 save and Gardas, I think would survive a Maw Crusher.
I believe so.
Yeah. And the key is that extra 10 wounds from double reinforcing rather than splitting it across two blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've pretty much talked this one to death. Have anything else you want to add about this one?
No. Yeah, just again, Thunderbolt Volley is so good, right? And with six Raptors. But again, the issue is the 2-drop, and he's gonna probably not leverage at turn 1. So I think that's the issue that this list has.
Yeah, if he goes up against a 1-drop shooting list, very, very, he has to double. Like he's relying on a coin flip to win, which is not a good place to be.
Not competitive.
No, but it's a lesson everybody has to learn.
Yep.
Jason in the chat says that's a problem I had fighting beasts, referring to just tons and tons of targets, right? Target saturation.
Oh, beasts, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't care that I killed 2 units per turn. All the units were disposable, and he'd summon some back. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is like Stormcast can delete pretty much anything. Like pick a thing, Stormcast focus fire it between Fulminators, Raptors, it's dead. But then you've blown everything, and then the rest of the army is still there. So it's a matter of, well, how much effective damage did you do to their list? If killing a Lariel is going to win you the game, then it's a good play. But if you spend everything to kill 60 zombies and then they just get revived at a graveyard, then you've done nothing. I'm thinking, longer conversation there, but I think that's the direction the game is going. And because Stormcast are such a threat right now, we're going to see more redundancy. We're going to see more like just screens. People are going to focus less on dealing damage and more on just having stuff that's expendable.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's kind of the archetypes of what your list does, right? Either you go heavy damage, or we're seeing quite a few armies now that are wound soaks or DPS checks, as people would say, where does your army have enough damage to take me out, or do I just overrun you with bodies?
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked at the new Fire Slayers battle zone that's come out, but they could do either style. But the attrition style on Fire Slayers is really nuts. Like, try killing 30 Volkite Berserkers with -1 to wound, which you can't unbind because it's a prayer, right? With a 5-up ward, which you can't stop because it's just an activated ability with no dice roll. And with all-out defense, which you can't stop because they're in Hunters of the Heart.
Hunters, yeah.
Like, how do you kill this unit? It's 90
potentially a
wounds.
Rally on a 4-up if you have a Battlesmith.
Yeah, so if you're not locking them down in melee, they're just going to rally back on 4-up. Good lord.
Especially if you do massive amounts of damage and then you just remove outside of 3 so that you rally. So
it's so hard to push that brick. I don't know how strategically useful that is, right? Because you have to pay like 600 points almost, and then you need a tunneler probably to get them in somewhere useful. But man, that's a hard brick to shift. That is really tough to move, and there's a lot of value in that strategically. Let's take a look at the next list. This is another Anthony. This is Anthony Trentanelli. And he's running Skaventide, so he's running a 1-drop as well. There's a lot of 1-drops at the start of
Yes.
the slice, just happened that way. But he's running double Arch Warlock with more warp power. He's running Thanquol with 4 warp fire projectors, which I know you are a big fan of that
Yes.
model. He's running 2 squads of Acolytes and then a big old block of Storm Fiends.
9, yeah.
And then he's got the typical, whenever you take Storm Fiends, you take a Soul Screen Bridge because they're just too slow to do anything without it, and a Warp Lightning Vortex. So you're the Skaven expert here, I would say. So why don't you run us through what he's trying to do?
Yeah, so I mean the Storm Fiends are a very, very scary unit. With more warp power, a Warpstone Spark, they do insane amounts of damage. And they have quite a few ablative wounds as well on the melee guys. I believe there's 7 wounds apiece. So that will be 21 ablative wounds prior to you getting into the actual shooting meat.
Yep.
Now, they don't have the best bravery. They don't have the best defense. But trying to combat into 9 Storm Fiends, even, what if you're shooting, you're in a good spot. If you're in a melee, the Unleash Hell will just rip you apart as well.
Yeah, the guaranteed mortal wounds that Storm Fiends do when you charge them are nasty.
Yeah. He has some redundancy in the 2 Arch Warlocks with more warp power because that's what gives the Storm Fiends such reliability. And Thanquol's there just to eliminate hordes. If somebody has, we're seeing a rise in skinks with Thunder Lizard, like -1 damage is just so good. And so that piece is there, and it allows him to use a lot of CPs and refund them pretty easily because of Thanquol's 1 CP use for 3 CP basically per turn. The list kind of just hinges upon, can you get the bridge off?
Yeah. Really hope your opponent didn't bring a Dispel Scroll. That's
yeah. It is pretty reliable. The Arch Warlock, is able to reroll with a +1 near a Gnarlroot. So it's rerolling +1, and this bridge is 6. So if he deploys it outside 30, and then the Storm Fiends have a 24-inch reach after, so 24 plus 18 plus 6 is what the threat range of what the Storm Fiends you're looking at.
Now, the Gnarlroot does have to be at the edge of the board, right? So it's not like you can deploy the Gnarlroot in the middle and then you can go in a circle around that. So it is, you can, if he puts one in the middle and you kind of count, because this is a battle regiment, so you'll be able to see their deployment perfectly.
Correct.
So you have all the information you need to try to keep some key units out.
Correct.
And also the Storm Fiends don't all have a 24-inch threat range, right? Like that's
only 3.
Yeah. The other guys have way shorter.
12. 12. Yeah. So it is a shooting list that you can screen out. Since they have to arrive outside of 9, if you're behind 3 of your screen, they're not going to be able to shoot your softer pieces. The lobbers, the globe wind launchers will do some work, but against bigger threats that have 18, 16, 18 wounds, they're not going to be able to take it out in one go, especially if you save stack. If you know that they're going for it, you find a sour with all-out defense, then I think you're pretty set. I think the list struggles with bodies, obviously. He's trying to blow you off of the table. And again, it's that conversation we had before of he gives you the turn, and if he doubles, this list will eliminate almost anything in the whole game.
Yeah, it'll roast quite a bit. You have to double screen. You have to kind of predict where he's going to bridge and then double screen on that, so that even if he shoots the front line, he will have to shoot the second line as well, and then he still won't be able to get in range with the warp fire projectors into the good targets. It's hard to play against. You have, I don't know about you, but every time I play this game, I'm thinking like, okay, what happens if my opponent double turns, right? And that's really hard to do on like rounds 2, 3, 4. Because there's so much happening at that point. But round 1, based on deployment, you can kind of think about what's going to happen with the double turn.
For sure.
This list is like, you're going to win hard or lose hard. And it seems like it's pretty easy to lose hard. Like, the thing, like, if somebody snipes off the Storm Fiends, that's it. The game's over, right? And it's like, it's not impossible to do that. They're bulky. Right, but it's not impossible by any means to kill those 9 Storm Fiends if you get the upper hand on him. He doesn't have the bodies to screen out against any kind of fast Alpha Strike. Like if he's playing up against
Ironjaws.
Ironjaws just charge in, and that's it. They're done. They'll charge in pigs first to absorb the unleash, and then charge in with the Mock Russia and maybe even a Rogue Idol if they're running one.
For sure.
Yeah, Kragnos gets in here. That's it. Right, like It's a win hard or lose hard kind of list. It looks like
Yeah.
you don't. I don't.
And
Go ahead.
yeah. I know Anthony is a gentleman who plays a lot of other armies. He's taking, in his own words, a more fun list, because he's up here to have fun. So that's kind of the backstory of this particular list.
Good. That's what everybody should be trying to do, right?
Yeah, 22 models is going to be easy to move around and have fun.
Yeah, nobody's gonna hate playing against this, right? Even though, which is crazy to say, you go back to 2019 when they put out the Skaven Battle Tome, and if somebody put this, you'd be like, "Really, dude? Come on!" But now it's like, "Oh, it's just a teleporting block of 9 Stormfiends. No big deal."
You just kill them or ignore them and kill everything else, and you might be in a good spot as well.
Yeah, this list is really lacking on bodies. No screening potential. Even if you just took out like the Arch Warlocks and the Acolytes, and you have any battle plan with 4 objectives, you just win, right? Like he can't contest more than 2 objectives. That's it.
Yep, for sure. And the thing is, the Stormfiends hit on 4s, and so without the reliability of more war power, they're gonna miss.
Yeah, it's like killing the Skink Priest in a Seraphon army. Like, it's a bigger deal than it seems.
Yep, for sure.
In the chat, we have a question here. I'll let you answer this one, but it says,
"Sure.
Can 9 Stormfiends even fit wholly within 6 inches of the bridge and keep coherency?"
Yes, they can.
It's
I have
not
had
easy.
experience. Yeah, you put the melee ones off to the side, and so so you don't need them near the front at all because they're just your bladed wounds.
Yeah, you want the warpfire projectors in the middle, depending, middle towards the enemy, right? Yeah, looks good. This is, battle regiment that's there. We're going to see a lot of battle regiments.
Yeah, for sure. 89 wounds as well.
It's higher than some of the lists in here. Next one here, Bill Souza, a longtime player. I've been admiring his lists for many years, and I'm very happy I get to play with him in an event finally. He's running Flesh Eater Courts, which is like a thing nobody cares about right now. Nobody's talked about Flesh Eater Courts in years. And I think it's been long enough that he's definitely going to catch some people off guard with the very specific tricks that everybody forgot over the last 2 years.
Yes.
So
double screens.
Yeah. The pile in after you fight. Make sure that there's no enemies within 3 inches. And then make sure if he double charges, you have... It's all screen positioning. If you master screen positioning, Flesh Eaters are not an issue.
Yep.
Not true. It's a dice game, but still, they're easier to deal with. Let's say that. So taking a look at the list here, this is like the meta Flesh Eater Courts list from a few years ago. All right, you've got your Ghoul King. He's in Blisterskin, so he's got all the Blisterskin stuff. He's going to fight you twice. Horrors and Flayers are going to come up the sides and fight you. You've got a Regent to summon dudes. Spectral Host to give your Ghoul King a run in charge, just to give him that extra range, especially now these days you can run 6. Back then you couldn't run 6, so it's even faster now on a smaller table. But what makes this list just extra spicy is the ally choices of Gorslav and 40 Deadwalker Zombies. Which is awesome. This is a really cool tech choice. Because one thing that Flesh Eater Courts struggle with is once your opponent has dealt, and they will, because Flesh Eaters aren't particularly durable, once they've dealt with your initial wave, you don't have the bodies left on board to contest objectives. And if you put those hammer units on objectives, then your opponent just picks them off because you can't fight first unless you charge. You have no defense against shooting. Like, it's a fragile army that relies on recursion, which unfortunately isn't good enough, right? Like the chalice and all that stuff. There were some fun builds with like ghouls and bringing those back to life for a little while, but they never really panned out that well. So I really like this. This gives it that, like, yeah, you're going to fight a whole bunch of stuff, and then I'm also going to be adding zombies to my army every turn.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting point because of, in a traditional sense, when I play Flesh Eater Courts, I, try to either dominate them in terms of output so that you take off their main damage pieces, or B, you try to find fights outside of objectives, so that they have to choose whether they want to score or take your stuff off. kind of give them that hard choice, especially if you have shooting. You don't put your shooting units or your threats near objectives at all, and they have to make that hard choice. But with the 40 Deadwalker zombies in Gorslav, if you eliminate those 40 Deadwalker zombies on a CP, he just brings them back. So
Does
yeah,
Gorslav have that ability?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. He just has it on his war scroll. Every time I face him, he's in Soulblight. So yeah, that's even better then.
Yeah, CP to bring back half.
So you got to snipe Gorslav while also dealing with a Flesh Eaters list. Like that's a fun challenge. I like that.
And Bill is a very, very good player in terms of positioning. He's all about positioning. So this isn't just a push forward army and try to table you really quickly. He's going to play it quite conservatively and nickel and dime you pieces here and there until there's a certain point where the game breaks in his favor, and then that's when he's gonna be aggressive.
Yeah, I get the feeling he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna be like a typical aggressive Flesh Eaters like you're saying. I think he's gonna be more reserved with his Ghoul King, use it as a counterattack unit, relying on just like the Flayers to play the flanks, right? Horrors probably in the middle with the Ghoul King, and then zombies wherever you need them, basically. Just like as a general overview. But the Horrors are interesting. They keep getting reduced in points because their stats just aren't the best. But they've gotten so low in points that you can now bring 12 of them along with 40 zombies and a Ghoul King, right? Like they're so cheap now. And they're still, I think, like 3s and 3s, 2 damage apiece, 4 attacks a model, something like that.
Yeah, and 6s are 3 damage on the thing. So potentially no rent though. So that's kind of where they fall down. But with
he's
enough attacks.
He's got the Ghoul King, the zombies, and the Crypt players all exploding mortals in your face. I think he's going to be okay against armor. The Horrors are there. You went really heavy on the Horrors, and I'm really curious about that. That's the piece that doesn't look like it's a big deal in this list, but when have you played Flesh Eaters and seen 12 Crypt Horrors at a tournament? Like, I've never seen that. So I want to see what he pulls off with this. I actually can't even... I feel like I'm missing something, right?
Yeah.
Is it like Blisterskin makes them fly, and then you cast Spectral Host on them? Or no, hold on. You cast Spectral Host to make them fly, and then use the Blisterskin command to teleport them? Something like that?
Yeah, you would still be outside of 9, so you're still relying on the 9-inch charge if you do that. So I'm not quite sure either. I'm not quite sure.
And that also relies on Spectral Host going off, which is does the Archregent have a casting bonus? I don't remember.
No, I don't believe it does.
No.
So I'm not quite sure. There's something we're definitely missing, especially with Bill piloting this and putting this list together. And so not quite sure.
I didn't tag the battle line here, but it's the Crypt players. I should have mentioned this at the start. At this event, there is no Tooth and Nail, so all Deep Strike shenanigans are allowed. There is no Apex Predators, so there's no focus on leaders controlling objectives, and there's no power in numbers, which means there's no focus on battle line controlling objectives, which to me is like the best event possible because I hate all 3 of those. They warp list building way more than any battle plan should, and I feel like the scenarios we're getting are going to be good enough for that sort of thing.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's could come up at some point in our conversation. Like
his grand strategy being Predator's Domain is not one that you see very often either.
At this event you do. It's on so many lists, and it's what I think. I was thinking about this. It's like, if you're gonna win, this is the easiest possible one to score with. So the scoring at this event is like 25 points for winning the game, but then 5 points for getting your grand strategy, like in terms of event scoring, right?
Correct.
So if your opponent does something, like if you're running prize sorcery with 2 wizards and you happen to need them to die in order to win the game, you lose your grand strategy, and that's the tiebreaker at the end of the day, right?
Correct.
So I've seen a lot of people running Predator's Domain in this event, and I think that's because if you're going to win the game, you just get Predator's Domain, right?
Yeah,
like, if you're
because you check at the end of the game.
Yeah. Which just means if your opponent concedes, you just get it, right? You can't be like, oh, I concede, and I've revived my wizard because you've conceded. It doesn't work like that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
And he took the Bloodthirsty Triumph, which is odd.
I think it goes back to our conversation of the Spectral Host teleport.
Yeah.
I don't know. Crypt Horrors are not elite, so they're and I don't know if they have a champion. I could be wrong in that sense.
I don't think they do.
And it's the same with the zombies as well. They don't have a champion as well. So
that makes sense. You've only got 3 heroes here, so if none of the units can issue commands to themselves, then it makes sense to try to get a rerollable command, or sorry,
yep.
a rerollable charge that way. Probably makes more sense than Inspired, because most of the damage in this list is coming off hit rolls of 6.
Yeah. Gorslav's going to be near the back. He has a 6-up save with just being 5 wounds. The archer usually sits near the throne, and so your Ghoul King's kind of your one piece that moves up. And if you're trying to affect a different end of the board, then your Ghoul King's not going to be... Your Ghoul King's on one side, and then you're trying to affect another side. And if you need a charge roll to go off to win the game, then that could potentially be in your back pocket.
What do you... It's Bill. We have to assume everything here was done meticulously. So I'm curious.
Yes.
What do you think the Blood Feast is for? Do you remember what that spell does?
I don't even know what it does.
Okay. So you have to pick an enemy unit within 12, and then you pick a Flesh Eater Court unit within 6. The enemy suffers D3, and then you heal 1 wound for each wound you did. So it's like a Nagash siphon. You kind of just like steal health from people. If you rolled a 10 or more, you do D6 instead of D3. And I think you can also revive models with this, but I think it's only the ghouls. I don't think you can revive flayers or horrors with it.
I don't know, because the only reason I could possibly think of is trying to free yourself if you're in combat in the hero phase, but you have Arcane Bolt to do that.
It doesn't
already
work there because that happens at the start of movement.
Correct. So in the hero phase, you Arcane Bolt in the hero phase, and then in the beginning of the movement, you unleash it.
Yeah, but I guess
D3?
that's only reliable if they have exactly 1 wound left, right? Because if your whole strategy is
D3,
it's better to do it in the hero phase than to wait until the start of the movement phase, in terms of more options, right? I'm just wondering why he did this instead of like the 5-up ward spell, which is like the super common pick for Flesh Eater Courts. Maybe he just thinks he's still gonna die even with the ward.
Yeah, but then you're taking more output away. Like D3 wounds is not comparable at all to half your wounds. Basically, again, effective with the 5-up ward, right? So I'm not quite sure. And not being sure is
concerning.
Dangerous.
Normally, I'd chalk it up to like inexperience, but it's Bill, so I'm not going to do that. I have to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Yeah,
it could also be a double reverse, where he took that thinking that everybody's gonna look at it and be like, oh, there's some secret tech with this, but really he just took it to mess to mess with everybody. Because I'll tell like a very, very brief story of me going to a tournament. Everybody was whispering. I guess I have a little bit of a reputation as being a competitive player. And so everybody was wondering what my list did, and everybody was very confused. My list was 30 Iron Drakes in living cities, and I had a bridge to bridge them over. But I had made an error in list building, and when I submitted it, I had Spell Portal, not Skull Scream Bridge. So prior to the tournament starting, everybody was wondering what my game plan was for the Spell Portal, and if there was some secret tech that I knew that nobody else knew. But it was just an error.
You're ahead of the meta.
So I had 30 Iron Drakes without a bridge. Genius. So I mean, it could be one of those things where he plays a mind game because he knows his reputation precedes him, and so he just uses something like that in order to mess with his opponents. Could be a very, very 3D, 4D chess kind of thing. So not quite sure, and it worries me when I'm not sure. So.
It'll be obvious in hindsight when it beats you.
Yes.
Right? Like, be like, oh, of course, that's why you did that. Like his Fire Slayer list before the new book came out, which was like just
Hearthguard, yeah.
It was perfect. It was like a perfect Fire Slayers list, and then 2 Storm Drakes to round it out. Just amazing.
Yep.
Every piece of that list was spot on.
So. Yeah. He has no fat in his lists. Every single thing has a purpose and a place. He doesn't take things just because he has points or whatever. He will do things in order to maximize a game plan, and you have to find out what that game plan is.
You have to find it out and then figure out a way to beat
it
in like Correct. 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Carl. Here's a familiar face. You might know him. Auric War Clans, Kruleboyz, Big Yellers, Battle Regiment, Run us through your list and tell me how to beat you.
Okay. There is
I'm
one
kidding. You
correction.
don't.
There is one correction in that it is a 2-drop, not a 1-drop.
2-drop.
Unfortunately, Kragnos cannot fit in with a Snatcher Boss
Good point.
since they're both. So he's just outside of that battle regimen. Um, the goal of my list here was basically to try to make Kragnos as competitive as possible, and so kind of running him through different factions. I kind of identified Kruleboyz as kind of one of those things that that can cover the weaknesses of Kragnos because of the shooting. It's kind of like a countercharge army, kind of what we were talking about with the first list, where the Bull-Boys encourage you to come closer, and then Kragnos is your counter charge piece, and he basically ruins the world.
Because even with a
in that
3d6
sense.
charge, he's still not reliably a super fast like Maw Crush level speed unit.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
it's better to move 20 inches than it is to move 10 and charge 10.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. So this list kind of came upon after I went to LVO. I took Kragnos with Iron Jaws, thinking that 3d6 charge is something that would complement the speed of the pigs. And what I ended up finding was you have a limit of how far you can go. Even with the 3d6 charge and pigs, 18 plus 10 is still 28, and Kragnos 10 plus 18-inch charge is still 28. So you're playing at that 28-inch line. I had a lot of opponents just sit right outside of it with either shooting or with Stormdrake Guard, where you have the double move. You just hold it so that you have to keep me honest. Double move plus the 12-inch fire breath is just so good.
Yeah.
And so I had struggles with things that could pass that 28-inch barrier, and so the Bull-Boys are there. So basically, and 20 Hobgrot Slit as a screen is very good.
Yeah, they cover a lot of space,
well.
and they have base-to-base cohesion because they're on 25 mils.
Correct. With a super sneaky, you can basically place them anywhere prior to the game starting. So you have a screen, no matter what the battle plan looks like, you'll have a 20-man screen in front of your whole army. It doesn't matter what it looks like. If it's short deployment, long deployment, you'll always have that prior to the game starting. And then Mork's Eye Pebble is a 5-up ward against shooting, and so that benefits allies as well. So Kragnos gets a 5-up ward against shooting, so he's incredibly hard to take down for that one turn. And so that's kind of where I put my list together.
It looks like you're building a list that can deal with melee armies, but at the same time not just fold to the big shooting armies with the 30-inch range. That's going to, like, it's going to kill your Bolt Boys unless you hide them in mud on a 4-up, right? Like, there's not really much you can do about that.
Correct. Yeah.
Even the Mork's Eye Pebble just won't be enough because Bolt Boys are fragile.
No, it won't. Yeah. 6-up save, 2 wounds apiece. They'll fall down to anything. But again, if I do get the covered in mud, it covers a wide area of the board, and I'm able to affect it with impunity, basically. Lumineth is the one army that I'm incredibly scared of because 36-inch, first of all,
and no line of sight.
And no line of sight. But it's not popular nowadays, so I kind of made a meta call, and I think I was correct. I don't think there is Lumineth in this tournament.
Not a one.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep.
On that question, why do you think they just dropped off in popularity so suddenly? They barely changed in the battle scroll. I think like Sentinels went up 20 points, so those lists went up like 60, maybe 100 points. Is that enough to just completely destroy the faction, or is it like they just can't deal with Storm Drakes? I think it's that they just can't deal with Storm Drakes.
I think it is twofold, and I think you identified it. Not Storm Drakes, Long Strikes or Adjudicators. If you have Thunderbolt Volley, can effectively eliminate tech lists basically turn 1. I've seen it happen multiple times. And so tech lists is a piece now that is a liability in some matchups. He's not the be-all end-all he was before, where you can protect him and he will dominate the magic phase. If you lose him turn 1, that's a third of your army basically effectively gone. Coupled with this change,
right? His casting is a linchpin of the army.
Yep. Your game plan revolves around that. The other thing is the 20-point increase, 60 points with 30 Sentinels, which is what we basically found to be, most competitive lists had 30 Sentinels. That 60 points means you can't take Endless Spell. And so your Emerald Life Swarm / Spell Portal is no longer in the list. You have to drop that to fit the 30 Sentinels. And Emerald Life Swarm is so good with the Sentinels. It just makes them much less survivable at that point. You can just blow them off of the table or chip them.
Do you think those lists could adapt and use the new Battlesmith that can rally any model back on a 4-up? Wait, can Idoneth even... Or sorry, Lumineth ally Fire Slayers?
No,
they can't.
Only Idoneth. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay,
Not even Stormcast. Yeah. So it's a very, very narrow list that already had basically as optimized as possible, and any change to points basically just ruined them.
That sucks, but I'll be honest, I'm happy to not play against 36-inch no line of sight auto casting mortal wounds on 5s with a reroll. Like, I'm so glad I could bring it back later. I was just tired of it. I needed a break.
Yeah. And I just thought of Jordan, who's one of my other co-hosts at Season of War, plays a lot of Lumineth. The other thing they struggle with as well is armies with a high wound pool. So we're seeing a lot of the rise of Soulblight.
Yeah, they do precise pinpoint scalpel damage, right? Like this thing, it's like there's a certain amount of mortal wounds your list can do, and that's really good against certain things, right? If your list can reliably do 20 mortal wounds, awesome. But if you're fighting something with 18 wounds and a 5-up board, you're going to have trouble, right? Because you can't suddenly just add more mortal wounds to your list.
Yep.
Which is like, okay, well now they're, especially in an AOS where you can double turn, it's like, okay, well this went from bad to worse. Like it can really snowball out of control. But back to your list. Could you remind me what Choking Mist does? Is that the one that removes wards?
No. So this is a 24-inch spell, and everything within 6 inches of it cannot run, and is -1 attack in melee.
So, sorry, how does that work? 24-inch range spell, but if you're within 6?
You pick a point, and every unit within 6. Yeah.
Just can't run.
Can't run, and -1 attack. So,
attack or melee attack?
Melee attack. So, unfortunately, with the Swamp Caller Shaman, you're wanting to buff one of the Bolt Boys with the poison, and you can't cast a spell when you do so.
Right.
So I rarely employ the spell, but if I know that my opponent is attempting to run onto a point to win the game, late game, then I'll deploy Choking Mist there, because it's only cast on a 6.
Now, if you ran an Arcane Tome on a Swamp Caller Shaman, could you give up one of his spells to do the elixir and then also cast a spell?
No, it says you cannot cast.
Just not at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a bummer.
Yeah. It is a bummer. And the spell lore, I believe, is specifically tied to Swamp Caller Shamans. I believe. I may be wrong. I haven't taken a look at it. Could bear some testing to drop more Side Pebble for another for an Arcane Tome, and then put Nasty Hex, which is the no ward, or Choking Mist on another character. Could potentially do that.
Even just Mystic Shield on Kragnos, right?
Yep. It's very, very good.
Mork Side Pebble is a good artifact in the wrong faction, because it gets better and better the more wounds you have, right? Like that's how effective wounds scale. So unfortunately, you're using Kragnos is only 18 wounds, so that's adding 9, which is really good. That's really, really good. But it's like you really want something like just tons of Gut Rippas all over the field, and you use the Pebble, and your opponent just cannot shoot their way through it, right?
Yeah. It's unfortunately a call I had to make, because Kragnos, again, the same conversation we were having about Techless, he's much tankier than Techless, but 18 wounds is 18 wounds. And you could potentially punch through him quite quickly. And if you lose Kragnos in this list, I'm in it for a tough road.
So what did you what was your meta call here? You were expecting a lot of Lumineth, you think, or
no, just Stormcast with double shoot is the thing that could potentially take him out.
Does the Pebble is just in the shooting phase, right? It won't work against the volley, but it'll work against the regular shoot.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's more of it's a deterrent. Yeah.
That Thunderbolt volley has so many like little extra things going for it that it doesn't need. It could have just doubled the shooting characteristic in the shooting phase, right? Like.
Yep.
Yep. No, it looks interesting. I'm very I haven't played against Mass Bolt Boys because like Dominion came out and I was like, 24 inches. Okay, I'm never going to care about this unit because I can shoot further. And they can't move and shoot 24, right? And there's no teleports or anything. So like
No,
Like
unfortunately not.
you can super sneaky them, right?
You could,
Yeah.
but then you can't buff them with the
Elixir.
elixir, so they'll be mortals on 6s. So much less reliable in that sense. In Beg Yellers, there are 27 inches, but again, it's not 30.
It's not 30,
No.
and it's not 30 plus move, right? That's the killer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's 27 flat. Yeah.
Well, we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of melee armies. I think if you get the right matchups, you can do really well. And there's no Lumineth, right? Which is fantastic.
Yeah, which is exactly the meta call that I took.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, interesting to see. I've taken it to 2 tournaments so far, and I've, lost very close games. So,
have you made any changes since then, or is it like the same list?
Dropped some Bolt Boys and upgraded I used to run a Gnarlroot, which unfortunately was 5-inch move, and with Fastan he's 10-inch move for one game.
Wow.
And so now I have a Snatch a Boss on Sludge Raker Beast, which with Fastan is 16 plus the 3d6 charge. And he's a much more heavy damage piece than the Gnarlroot is.
Tell me about the Rip of Snarl things, because I saw them in another list. Is it just filling points, or is it like something specific? Okay, that's what I thought.
So it's 70 points. They are very, very fast. They're 12-inch move, and they can pile in from 6.
Ooh, that's going to be really good going forward, because Fire Slayers can't do anything against that. Like if there's a unit that piles in from 6 against them, that's it. You'd have run 18 and then just pile in 6, and it's like that's a useful ability.
Get to a point, or tag a unit just like it within 3, so it's like 2.9 in an edge of it.
Yeah, because you don't have to finish within half an inch like a charge. Yeah, really powerful ability.
Yeah, and for 70 points,
that's
very, very good.
If you cut them, was there anything else you could have brought for 100? Because you would have had 100.
10 Slitas is 80 points. It was the other thing. So
yeah,
and they're 5-inch move. Yeah,
faster.
4 wounds more is the only comparison to it.
You've got a pretty slow castle here, relying on Kragnos to be hammer and anvil for your melee.
Yes.
So,
yes.
It's cool. I like it. I was thinking Kragnos when the Battle Scroll came out, I wanted to see him in every single faction, because he changes them all in a very different way. So it's really cool.
For sure.
And we're going to see later, there's a couple more lists. Just one more, actually. Zach's list.
Zach,
we'll get there.
Yeah, we're Crag bros. Me and Zach, we love Kragnos.
So this is Danny Ajandi.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get a lot of names wrong today, man. Running a battle regiment for Kruleboyz, but it's very different than your Kruleboyz. It is Big Yellers as well, but he's got the Snatcher Boss with the exact same loadout yours has. Then he's got 2 Shamans, 20 Gut Rippas, a squad of 9, and a squad of 6 Bolt Boys. Which I'm assuming each one shaman is going to babysit each one of those. And then 10 Hobgrot Slitas and a Rogue Idol, which is fun. The Rogue Idol has the Kruleboyz keyword, I believe.
It does not have the Aura keyword, so it does not do mortals. Yeah.
I was so excited for that tech. I'd never seen anybody run it, and that's why, obviously.
Which is the Slitas don't do mortal wounds as well, because they don't have the Aura keyword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a list that's hoping the Rogue Idol kind of has like the same role as your Kragnos, but it's all offense. It's all gas, no brakes, right? Like it's not taking a hit. The Rogue Idol's gonna die. 9 and 6 Bolt Boys, I guess, just for mass shooting and buffing with the Swamp Collar Shamans. How many points are 3 Bolt Boys? 120?
120, correct.
Yeah, because I was wondering if you dropped the Hobgrot Slitas, could you have picked up? I guess you could have cut Gut Rippas and added more Bolt Boys, but I guess he valued the screens more.
Screens, yeah. Gut Rippas at 180 for 20 wounds on a 5-up save is not very good. Now, with a Snatcher Boss, the Snatcher Boss is your big centerpiece in this, is because every 6 is +1 mortal wound. So those Gut Rippas will be doing 2 mortal wounds on 6s. So it's 20 attack, 6s are 2 mortal wounds. If they're buffed by the Shaman, 5s do 1, and then 6s do 2. So they could potentially do quite a bit of punch, 2-inch reach each. So their 32 mil base doesn't really bug them. The Rogue Idol is actually interesting because it does give you +1 to cast as well. So he might be looking to cast that Choking Mist much more, often than I would. Sneaky Miasma is he chooses a monster, a Kruleboyz monster, and it gets to move in the hero phase. So that a rogue idol is going to be 20 inches, then charge. So 10 in the hero, 10 in the movement, and then charge.
Do you think he's trying to go Alpha Strike with this? Because he's got the Battle Regiment, he's got a double move Rogue Idol, he's got a fast stun, and he can aggressively deploy his Bolt Boys if he knows he's going first. Do you think this is an Alpha Strike kind of list, or do you think it's like Castle Counterpunch kind of style?
I think he's in the midway. I think depending on where or what his opponent's list looks like, he could potentially just alpha them off and take them off almost immediately if they don't have any screens. But if they have screens, I think he'll play a more conservative game.
This is the issue with big yellers, right? Is that another shooting castle like Lumineth, Seraphon, Stormcast, they will just shoot better, and then you're left with a bunch of lackluster melee. I don't know, lackluster is the right word, but like I'm not that scared of one Rogue Idol and 20 Gut Rippas. That's not a super big threat. That's like 2 screens max, and then
Again, it's the conversation we had prior to us starting. I think the stream was people. There's a majority of people that like to take their big toys and sink all their points onto toys, and they forget the screens afterwards. And so a list like this will just remove you. If you just took all hammers and no anvils, this list will do very well in that instance.
Yeah. If you're just playing Archaon, like, yeah, I can see that. This is if your opponents are running into the middle and you're rolling dice, you're going to do great.
Yep.
Yeah, yours kind of has like the same concept, but instead of like you've got Kragnos in there offsetting a lot of the weaknesses that this particular archetype played in Big Yellers has, which is interesting. I really want to see a very competent shooting list for destruction. I really want to see that, and I'm really disappointed that the that big catapult thing that the Kruleboyz got. What is that? The big crossbow shoots like tree trunks.
Kill bow.
Yeah. I'm so disappointed in that thing, and it's even
not worth it.
It's even in a monster meta. How did this thing fail? Like, man, what a miss! I'm so disappointed.
One shot, and you're usually relying on five up to do the mortals to do it.
No, is it even good? Like if you bring 4, right? Because like
no, you bring 1 and that's it. 0 or 1. Because it's only really more damage than the Bolt Boys because it's 130 points instead of 120. 27 inch, so you don't even get any more range from them as opposed to the Bolt Boys. They have the exact same range. -2 rend instead of -1 rend, but you don't. That doesn't really matter when you're looking for this 5s and 6s to do mortals. And the damage only goes over the Bolt Boys if you have something that's 16 wounds or over.
Oof. Well, the way monsters are going, everything seems to be getting more wounds with every book, right? Like Magma Drops are up to 16 now. With Lofnir, they're up to 18.
18, yeah. So there could be potentially a place for them, but they are one shot. And if you're relying on -2 rend to do damage, could do a lot, could do nothing. The Bolt Boys just have the amount of shots, and then you're looking for 6s and 5s, and those will do mortals.
Yeah, so you're not even caring about the rend 1, 2 damage shots. You're looking for the mortals.
Correct. Yeah. And the reliability of dice or of more dice is just much better than a single dice. Yeah.
Agree with that.
Die.
Next up here we have Emma Mangels from the Cast Sass fan club, whose list is I play for the lore of the Deepwood. She's running a 2-drop Gnarlroot Sylvaneth battalion with Alariel, Warsong Revenant, a Branch Wraith, minimum squads of Tree Revenants, some Kurnoth Hunters, and Drycha. And remember this list because you're going to see it 2 more times pretty much in this live stream. They're very, very... We have 3 Gnarlroot lists that are basically the same thing, which is crazy. But yeah, I'm guessing this is trying to go off the back of the new... I think that's enough news. Woods War Scroll that they put out, along with the new Alariel War Scroll, which are actually good. Both of them are actually good. Based on the name of the list, I play for the lore. I'm not. Yeah, maybe it's throwing me off. I'm still going to take it seriously, right? It's got the Warsong Revenant with like the Warsong Revenant's loadout, which is Nurtured by Magic, Chalice of Nectar, and Flaming Weapon. It's got a spell portal for him to do shenanigans. The Spite Swarm Hive is interesting. I don't see that one in a lot of Sylvaneth lists.
Yeah, so the trick with the Spite Swarm Hive is twofold. So I think in this list is more of a defensive option because there's 2 modes to it. One is to give you +1 save in the bubble, And then the other one is to give you +3 charge. So a lot of lists, Sylvaneth lists, will include a Spite Swarm Hive. So you teleport your Kurnoths outside of 9, give yourself +3 charge, and it's a 6-inch as opposed to 9. So much more reliable. But because they don't, or Emma doesn't have a massive Kurnoth block, I'm thinking she's gonna opt for the +1 save, castle up, use the War Songs, with the Throne of Vines, Mortal Wound Bomb, to kind of take her opponents off. There's not very many wounds in the list, but it is, I think, deceptive.
It is. Branch Wraith is the one that
Summons.
Branch Wraith summons. Branch Witch does mortals.
Correct.
Okay, so it can add more Tree of Evidence as the game goes on, but it's really just like the Great Bows. Kurnoth Hunters with Great Bows are not a threat. Like nobody should be worried about that unit ever. Not their shooting, not their melee. They're just not a threat. The key here is the Warsong Revenant. Alariel's like, it's a big stompy body, whatever. Every list has a big stompy body. Everybody knows how to deal with that. It's the Warsong Revenant. So do you want to break down for people who might be watching the stream who don't know? Because it's a model that was released in Broken Realms with an Allegiance update in Broken Realms using a combination of abilities in their Battle Tome because it knows all the spells, but it doesn't. In Broken Realms, it doesn't say any of the spells, right? So I think this combo is going to fly over a lot of people's heads. So do you want to break down for people how it works?
For sure. So a Warsong Revenant, first of all, gets +1 to cast when it's near any wildwoods. So you always park him or her near a wildwoods. Because the wildwood scroll now blocks line of sight, it's a piece that's fairly safe when placed near or like inside a wildwood. You combo it with Umbral Spell Portal to cast their War Scroll spell. So the War Scroll spell is Unleash Spite Swarm. Cast on a 7. Basically, everything within 9 of the within the caster is takes mortal wounds equal to your casting roll. So if you roll 10 on the casting roll, you roll 10 dice for each unit within 9. Or I believe it's 6. Might be 6. Within 6 or 9. And each 5-up is mortal wounds. So if you roll 10 dice, you're looking at 3 mortal wounds to everything within that bubble. Now, with Umbral Spell Portal, you extend that range another 18 inches and combo that with a spell within their spell roll lore called Throne of Vines, which gives you +2 to cast, but you can't move. But because you don't want them to move anyways, means that on the first turn they could potentially have +3 to cast, and it doesn't have a stopping point to it. So just as long as you don't move, you can stack that bonus up. So on round 2, you could potentially have +5, then +7, then +9, and then by turn 5, you might be at +11 to cast. And the Unleashed Spite Swarm does not say unmodified casting roll; it just says casting roll, and so you can affect a massive amount of damage in a bubble with a piece that's safe in the back.
Right. Excellent breakdown. One thing I want to mention is that people see Flaming Weapon here and they're like, well, why would, if you're trying to be stationary with this model, it's because the model knows every spell from the lore, so you might as well just pick one of the universal spells, and like Ghost Mist is useless because you already have terrain that blocks line of sight, and you don't need to levitate anything because Alariel already flies. And I think Drycha flies as well, right?
She does not, but
no.
I think Levitate's cast on an 8, so you're not casting that.
Yeah. So it's a good combo. It's like one of the best things in Sylvaneth right now, which it doesn't sound that scary. Like taking 3 mortal wounds on turn 1 from not even 30 inches away. It's just okay.
Yeah, it is just okay.
And it's a lot of setup too, right? Like if any of that gets dispelled, like the spell portal or the Throne of Vines, or even just the spell you're casting, there's multiple points of failure. You could fail the spell cast.
Yep.
You can get unbound. You can get dispel scrolled. There's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Or even if you do get cast it, you could potentially just cast it on a 7, which on a 5, and you have to rely on 5-ups after this. So 7 dice on a 5-up. On average is 2, but we know the average is not all the time.
Average is not mode. Let's say that. The mean is not the mode. So what's going on with the new Alariel War Scroll? Everybody seems very interested in playing her these days. I wasn't terribly impressed, because for me the biggest thing when I saw her new War Scroll was, because I haven't played against Sylvaneth since Broken Realms, still can't retreat and charge. which is like the biggest deal in the world for a monster
No,
like that.
yeah. Um, she's a weird piece in that sh I think they built her up to be this unkillable piece because of how much she heals. But we know that wound tanking is not the same as save tanking at all. They're not. There's no equal between the two, and so she heals 2d6 per their hero phase. So if you double her, she's gonna die
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
Is she a 3-up save now or still a 4-up?
She is a 3-up save.
Okay.
16 wounds though.
Yeah, 16. No mortal wound protection.
Nope, no mortal wound protection. No pluses to cast. No pluses to unbind.
Goddess of Life, a literal god on the table field, cannot cast a spell.
So she is very expensive at 740 points, but she does have the ability to summon 200 points. So think of her as a 500-ish point model.
Whenever you see this, always just add a Tree Lord to the list, right? Which is like, Tree Lords are not scary at all. Like they're not.
No,
they're just
not at all.
They're barely a body, even. Like Sylvaneth are in desperate need of a new book. And maybe now that they finally nailed down how they want woods to work, we might get one.
And it kind of circles back to the first list we talked about, Anthony's list, where it's a 2-drop. So 1-drop shooting lists or 1-drop alpha armies like Ironjaws are able to just punch through this list quite quickly. 5 Tree Revenants is not very tanky.
Nope.
And the thing is, if you're able to take out Alarial top, then the top of 1 before she summons anything, then you're 900 or 740 points ahead.
Yeah, it's wild. I feel for Sylvaneth right now.
Yeah, and you can blow up the terrain now. So
I was going to mention that any monster can just break terrain, right? Like the woods were such a big deal in 2nd edition, relatively, right? 1st edition they were huge. Remember, like filling the whole table with woods.
Yeah, and you couldn't go anywhere. It just does mortals. Like each piece just does mortals.
Well, I had the best time because I had a Knight Heraldor, but everybody else was miserable.
Yeah.
But
which is an interesting note too, because if we see a Seraphon list here, they could temple that woods.
Yep.
And they could blow up inside the Warsong Revenant as well. He's only 7 wounds. He does have a 5-up ward against mortals, but that's easily
still like 12 wounds. It's not that hard to kill. He's a 5-up save. He's not hard to kill.
With Comet's Call plus Temple plus other things you could kill. And that is a 300 point combo that you're relying. 275 for the Warsong Revenant, then 80 for the Spell Portal.
And the rest of the list doesn't do that much damage, right? Like Drycha's okay, Alariel's okay, but like we said, there's so many weak things in this list that you can dump everything to kill Alariel. Like you can overextend and kill her and still be fine because you're not really worried about anything in this list countercharging you.
I will mention the Cass Sass fan club. That is in reference to Jordan's wife, Cassidy, who's one of the sassiest people we know. Okay. So she's part of the fan club apparently. I would not underestimate Emma though. Emma is part of Team America for Worlds. Okay. So she is a very, very competent player and could probably squeeze much more out of this list than a average player would.
Okay. Well, I like I said, I'm going to take it seriously, even though the name is throwing me off. It's like a double bluff, right?
Yeah. So that's cool. Emma.
All right. Looking forward to this. I'm glad we have Sylvaneth here. We talked about this before we started the stream, but like we actually have almost every single faction in Age of Sigmar at this tournament, which is crazy. It's crazy. I've never seen that
not something you see. I'll kind of talk about the breakdown of the factions kind of closer to the end and kind of my thoughts on that. Yeah. Oddly enough, because you put these slides in alphabetical order, it's so funny to me that the next list that we're talking about is almost the same as the list.
Yeah. That's, okay, next one. Let's just skip over. No, we'll talk about what makes this one different, right? Because it's still got the Warsong Revenant with the same loadout. It's got a Lariel, it's got a Branch Wraith. The spell is different. This one's going 1-drop instead, right? Like it trimmed the fat. It went for a bigger block of Dryads, 2 units of Tree Revenants, and 6 Karnoth Hunters, which, again, even with a unit of 6, they're still not a threat. Like this is just, it's sad how this, and they cost 225. Like, I don't understand what they're thinking with Karnoth Hunters. Like, why can't they be a competent shooting unit? Like, It would
at
fix Sylvaneth.
225.
They can't
Yeah.
even shoot through their own woods. Like, it wouldn't be a big problem.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a big problem.
It's ridiculous.
The other thing I will say about Sylvaneth armies, and it's something that it's not apparent when you look at lists or look at the book, is they can save stack better than any other army out there.
Really? Even Stormcast?
Yeah.
Ooh,
So they can easily get +3, +4, depending on what pieces they have. Now, both these lists don't have a Tree Lord Ancient. The Tree Lord Ancient gives you +1. The Spite Sword Hive gives you +1.
Is the Hive an aura or just pick a unit? I forget.
Aura.
Aura. Okay.
So it's an aura.
That's
yeah.
cool.
So you can get +2 from that. The Kurnoth Hunters can root for another +1. That's not dependent on Roar.
They eroded that, right? Used to be a reroll.
It used to be a reroll, which is obviously better than +1. And then if you put them in Hunters, you can all out defense for +1. So that's +4 there, almost automatic.
Mystic Shield as well, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you take Verduros Harmony like Geremy did here, you can bring back a Kurnoth Hunter, not dependent on being in combat or any of that. The interesting here is he went for Great Bows, and like you've said, I'm not very scared of Great Bows. Size with -2, 2-inch reach are much scarier, D3 damage. And he doesn't have Spice Worm Hive, so he's not safe stacking. So this list and Emma's list doesn't leverage the safe stacking that's apparent in Sylvaneth.
The problem with safe stacking in Sylvaneth is they're not a high wound army, so there's the low amount of mortal wounds that pretty much everyone can do are going to burn through you. Like 12 wound Tree Lord Ancient, okay, I can do 12 mortal wounds. Maybe not directly mortals. Maybe I might finish it off with a couple dice rolls,
half
right?
and half.
Yeah, but like critical mass is important. So like 18 wounds is much harder to kill than 14 or 12.
Yeah. And the other thing is their base save is usually 4s, except for Alariel, who's a 3. So you're relying on 3 up. So 1s and 2s, there's still a big failure point, even if you ignore all the rend in the world and all that. So
yeah, that is that matters if your save bonuses can exceed the rend. That matters, but it still sucks to like save on 3s and against like 0 rend attacks. Right? It's just like dying to 0 rend attacks. You've got +4 to saves, and you're just dying to crossbows. It's just a terrible feeling.
Yeah, for sure. Like I wouldn't see any problem if they were a 3-up save. Like they're very, very slow. They're super expensive pieces. Like just give them a role within the army.
They got to rethink what this army is supposed to be doing. Are they supposed to be like the army that makes trees everywhere and teleports around and charges out of that? Are they supposed to be like a castle army with dryads and then Kurnoths? Are they supposed to be centered around Alariel like how Daughters of Cain is centered around Morathi? There's just no clear direction on how Sylvaneth ought to be playing, and I hope they fix that with the 3rd edition book.
Yeah. I think in the AOS 2, they were leaning towards what you were saying with having mass amount of trees, but I think there was a little bit of a backlash. Sylvaneth is one of the most expensive armies to collect because of those trees, and it's a pain to paint. Leaves, if you're trying to glue individual leaves onto
and they break
trees
so easily. Good lord. Hey Levin, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. We'll be talking about your list soon, don't worry.
He just wants us to talk about his list
soon. It's GL, it's not a big deal. Okay, so I'm looking forward to another. There's one more of these and we'll get to it. So far I'm liking this version a little bit more. I think the dryads and bigger block of Kurnoths gives more options in terms of objective zoning and damage output even, right? Like Drek's not spectacular.
No.
So it's lacking on the mobility because it doesn't have the hive, right? So we'll see how it plays out. Next up, we're going to look at Graeme Lottering. Graeme. It's got to be Graeme. Okay.
Yeah.
It's usually got an H in there when I say Graeme, but yeah, he's from the We Will Bury You team, who have a few members coming. He's playing Soulblight, Gravelords, Legion of Night. This is our first non-battle regiment. Are you excited?
Yes.
Actual like enhancements and choices to talk about. So he's got Warlord and Hunters, which is like if you're not running battle regiment or like some strange core battalion that only your faction has, you're probably running Warlord and Hunters. That's the most common combo.
For sure.
So he's running Manfred, who's got that cool like I'm just gonna teleport out of combat, so you better shoot me or you're not touching me. He's got that going on. He's got a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, who looks like a pretty beefy melee hammer. It doesn't look like super tanky from that loadout. He's got Swift Form, Shard of Night, Fetid Miasma, and the Pinions. So it looks more offense oriented.
Yep.
He's got a Necromancer with Fading Vigor, and I can never remember what Fading Vigor does.
I think
So
it's a -1 to hit or -1 to wound. I'm not quite sure. All their things sound the same,
they
which
do.
unfortunately just confuses the heck out of me. But
Well,
it's seeking to cast Van Hales most of the time.
most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go through each one of these enhancements and explain them because I don't want people to be like, oh, they're just reading off the list. Tell me what they're actually doing. We'll do that.
Sure.
But so then he's got on top of that 20 wolves, 3 bats, 40 zombies, 5 blood knights, and 20 graveguard. And it kind of looks like an eclectic mix of random units from the battle tome, but it's not. Each one of those units serves a particular role, right? Like Fellbats are really good for absorbing Unleash Hell. 40 Deadwalker Zombies are really good for recursion and mortal wounds. Graveguards just slap damage. They do so much damage. It's crazy.
Yep.
And the dire wolves are 10 models that you can easily, like, you don't care if they die, you just bring them back, and they're surprisingly point efficient in terms of damage and wounds, right? Like for the whatever, I think 140, I think they are. They're just good for their points, right? Like they're not high impact, but they're efficient, especially like 20 wounds on a 5-up ward.
Yep.
No, 6-up ward usually.
5-up, 6-up, yeah.
5-up save, 6-up ward, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're in those small cavalry bases, so you can stretch them out quite easily. I do have now Fading Vigor is -1 attack.
Okay.
Melee weapons. So exactly like Choking Mist, kind of in my list.
18-inch range means you're not casting it turn 1. It's more like once the enemy comes to me or starting turn 2 onwards, I'm going to debuff something. That's a very powerful effect. -1 attack is really, really powerful. There's a lot of
coupled with the bodies that they have, right? So it just puts the 40 Deadwalker zombies even much more tanky because, trying to deal with 40 zombies, you want weight of attack. So if you just -1 attack, kill them, then you're in a very, very good spot.
Yeah.
The vampire on the loadout, like you were saying, is going to be used. People use Maw Crushers. Swift form is +2 to charge, and then Amethyst and Pinions gives you +5 to the move, and so that thing is just
flying
19 inches to charge.
Yeah. It's doesn't necessarily have to alpha strike on its own, but it can at any point in the game just hit the nos and just fly, right? Like that's what that thing's there for. Because the rest of this list is crazy slow, right? Like Blood Knights and Fellbats have a little bit of mobility. Manfred's mobility comes from retreating, teleporting out of combat, right? Like he's not that fast on his own. So it looks good. Are you familiar with Graeme as a player? Have you played with him before?
I believe I've seen him around. I'm not quite sure. I haven't personally played him, so I'm not quite sure what his skill level is in terms of this list. But it's put together pretty competently. The list is. So.
Yeah, there's one thing I like about the Soulblight Battle Tome is that each unit has its own niche, right? It's not like there's some units you'd be like, well, when would I use this? Like I can't think of a use for the Dynasty Born guys, like the Verkos little werewolf men from Curse City. I can't think of much use for them. But like in terms of the core units, not from Curse City, the fact that you can have Dire Wolves, Fellbats, Zombies, Graveguard, and Blood Knights all in the same list, all serving a different function of what your list is trying to do is fantastic.
Yep, for sure.
He went with Prize Sorcery as the grand strategy. He's got 3 wizards. It makes sense. Manfred cannot be killed by melee attacks, only by stomps for some armies. All they can do is stomp him to death. Shooting. So that makes sense. Prize Sorcery seems like a good one. And it's not like you could have fit this in a battle regiment anyway, right? Like, do you really want to reinforce Dire Wolves? And you've got 2 commanders, right? You can't run both of them as sub-commanders. So
Manfred and Vampire,
Yeah. So it's really tough to fit this in a battle regiment. You'd have to cut one of those.
And so like we talked about before, you just get as many bonuses as you can on your list if you can't fit it in super low drop.
Yeah. And Legion of the Night, that's the one where you can put skeletons in reserve, right? And I believe Graveguard count for that, or do they not?
I believe so. I think it's +1 to their save if you're in your territory. So I'll take a look at it. Yeah, +1 to your save in the first battle round period. So they have changed that. and you can just place any unit on the side, and you can ambush them from a battlefield edge.
Oh, any.
As
Okay.
opposed to the grave sites, which only are allowed summonable units.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so that's really good for a very slow army like Soulblight typically is. Especially like there's a lot of slow infantry in this list. Being able to hold them in reserve is really good. Like tactically gives you options, which I like having options. You can put them on the
mhm.
board if you need screens, or you can put them in reserve to threaten objectives and position. Maybe get lucky with some 9-inch charges. Yeah, I like having options. So that's
Yep.
looks like a fun list to play against. Nothing unfair at all, which is what I love about
No.
Soulblight. They always feel like an honest army.
Yeah. 155 wounds is pushing kind of the upper limit of lists as well.
Oh,
That
just you
we'll see.
wait. That is nothing. That's nothing compared to what we got coming up. Oh man, I
I think
can't
I
wait.
know whose list is we're talking about, but
Oh
yeah,
baby.
we'll get to it.
Coming up next, we have Geremy. Is another name I'm going to get wrong. Veysseire?
Veysseire? I
Veysseire?
don't know.
Sorry,
Not
Geremy.
quite sure.
You let us know how to pronounce it, man. Kharadron Overlords. When you see Kharadron, it's like it's going to be a blimp Alpha Strike list, and
Hmm.
it's not that. It's not a blimp
Mhm.
Alpha Strike list, right? Because blimp Alpha Strike is like people call it the clown car. You just pile as many bodies into a single Arcanaut ironclad, and then you just deploy it, and then you deep strike it, and everything unloads. And yeah, this is not that. It's got elements of that because you could load up a frigate with a chemist with a bottle, and then put some Arcanaut company in there, put some Thunderers in the other one. Like it's got elements of that, but it's not all in on the concept, which
Mhm.
frankly has me more worried because I'm very used to like all in one Zeppelin comes down, everything comes out of that, it's all in one spot, and they don't have the mobility really to get
Yeah.
out of there once they're done with this. This worries me a bit more. So sorry, so let's run through this. Um, Aether Chemist, spell in a bottle. That's pretty standard. Every single Kharadron list has that, right? It's got
With the
another.
vortex.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
got another Aether Chemist. This time with Collector, so that he can take another artifact with the Staff of Ocular Optimization, which I honestly don't know what it does. The only artifact from Kharadron I know is the spell in a bottle. Everything else is like,
You ha- yeah, you have to take the staff, unfortunately, because it's an older battle tome.
oh,
It's
okay.
locked in Zilfin. It's +1 to your shooting weapon, so that chemist will be 2s and 4s. 3d6 attacks -2 1
So a
damage.
free
So
all out hit, all out attack. That's not. It's okay. You
no,
have to
it's
take
not.
it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
then you have to take Collector. So you have to take spell in a bottle, right?
on
So
bottle. Yeah,
yeah. He's got 2 frigates, which are okay with the constant point decreases. They're getting to a point where they're becoming acceptably efficient shooting. Still not
yep.
good. I think I would rather run a gun hauler with a heavy cannon rather than a frigate. I think I could be wrong because I know the ironclad had extra shots, and then the frigate and the gun hauler had the same profile for shooting.
Yeah, so
I think so.
the frigate has the same the sky cannon's D6 shots, I believe. The um Ironclad 6, like just flat. And the Gun Hauler has the same heavy sky cannon. The only difference between the two is the carbines. The frigates have 4 of them, and they're 2 damage apiece. The Gun Hauler is 2 at 1 damage apiece. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the only difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as opposed and as well as the capacity, obviously, of ferrying people back and forth. That the have and the gun hauler don't. The points between them isn't that big either. It's only 90 points between the two,
Right.
between gun haulers and frigates.
Well, it adds up to another gun hauler in this list, but you need
Yeah,
some amount of transport, right? You can't not
yeah,
transport things with Kharadron. You have to. You can't do like a
yeah,
foot slog army. What do you
yeah.
think about the Debt Settler? That's the after you charge, you get like a 2-up to deal d6 mortals. What do you feel about that on the gun hauler running it as like a suicide piece? Because that's
Yeah,
hilarious. Rather than
yeah.
your very important frigates, like you're splitting your opponent's attention up. It's like, do I want to kill the gun hauler before it uses this d6 mortal wound bomb on me, or do I want to shoot down the frigates, which might even have some stuff inside them?
I actually used to run the debt settler all the time. The problem with Kharadron in 3.0 is safe stacking. They have a lot of -1 rend stuff
Mm.
that you can easily counter with all out defense, and so you need mortals to supplement your list in order to get through those tougher things, and which is why the Vortex is in there, and the Debt Settler, as well as the Storm Drake Guard with their Mortal Wound Breath. So that's I always run it with a Debt Settler. I will never take it with anything else.
But particular on the gun hauler, because the Debt Settler could have been on the frigates, right?
No, only gun haulers.
Oh, it's only gun haulers.
Weirdly
oh,
enough.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. I haven't played Kharadron in a while. Sorry.
Yeah, I owned Army, and I even haven't played it in a long time. But I think this list is pretty strong, and I think there was an omission here. There is an Ironclad in the list.
Did I miss it?
Yes.
Oh my god, that's a terrible mistake. So it is the clown car kind of build then, but without like tons of balloon boys in there.
Yeah.
It looks like it's more focusing on heavy. How did I miss the Ironclad? That's so. Yeah, these points don't even make sense. I'm looking at it now. I'm like, is there Gotrek in this list? And I'm not seeing him. Like, it's like 400 points missing.
And interestingly enough, he took the boat effect, the artifact on the boat that allows him to do mortal wounds on the charge as well. So he's really trying to cover that weakness that Kharadron have with the mortals coming from the other pieces.
I think everybody's expecting a save stacking meta, in particular, like Kragnos and Stormdrakes being 2-up and 3-up. Everybody's expecting those, and it's like, I need mortal wounds that don't come from spells to deal with these two things, which are high save and ignore spells.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Geremy is the captain of Team America. So he is a very, very capable player. His Kharadron play, I will say, is one of the best I've seen. He's won multiple events, GTs with KO when a lot of people have counted him out. So again, it's one of those things that the army itself, potentially isn't doing well in the grand scheme of things, but the player kind of elevates the army because they know it so well.
Like how I was doing Stormcast in 2nd edition.
Yeah, and nobody played that. Yeah, so it's basically that. He's a very, very good and very practiced player with KO.
I like this, and if it does well, I think it's going to blow open people's understanding of KO, because everybody's just doing the single clown car, right? Cram as many bodies in as you can, but this is... The problem with the clown car is that it just dies. It's not durable enough. You can't save stack on it because this is an army without Mystic Shield. It can get all-out defense, but it can't issue it on itself, right? So
you need the heroes to do that.
And this is not a hero-heavy army, right? So yeah, if you snipe off the heroes, then the boat is just totally vulnerable. 18 wounds on a 3-up with no Finest Hour, no healing, no mortal wound protection. I think it gets a 6-up ward while the gun hauler's nearby, but that's not
yeah, and that's not something to rely on. Yeah,
it seems like he's going for like mobile artillery. I don't think he's going all in like Kharadron typically do. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. And the Stormdrake Guard present this like, if I play far back, at any point I can teleport forwards with every single thing in my army and be aggressive. So tactically, I think this is the right direction to go for Kharadron given their current state.
Yep, and it's one of those where, what do you target? Like, each frigate is important, but it's not your whole game plan isn't wholly dependent on the frigate. The Ironclad is a much juicier target, but if you go to take that, you need something quite heavy because it's a 3-up save, 18 wounds to take it down. And in that sense, the frigates are free to operate and fly high and drop on objectives. So he's going to try to stretch you out as much as possible, flying high and going to one side and, exploiting that flank. And then when you go to respond, he'll pick up his whole army and then go to the other flank. And then when you respond to that, then again, it's an army that requires a lot of understanding of the game and understanding of threat ranges as well.
Yeah. My concern with this list, if I were to critique it, and I haven't played against it, so I don't know how valuable this concern is. It's not a high damage output list. It's got, the Ironclad doing 6, the 2 frigates doing D6, Gunhauler doing D6, and then whatever damage the Stormdrakes do, which is not a lot. They have to spike high on the wound on the breath to be an effective damage unit. It's not a high damage list, and I don't see how he's going to churn through some of the lists that we have in this pack here.
And you can fly around and drop all you want, but if that space that you want to be on is already occupied by an enemy unit,
that's the problem with shooting, right? Is like shooting happens after movement. So if you
Yeah.
even if you blow off the stuff on the objective, well, you're not on the objective
Correct.
still,
Yeah.
right? So it's a problem. I'm also curious why they took the Warblades on the Drakes, given that this army has enough Rend 1 stuff already. Like, he's got the Rend 2 Sky Cannons. I figured more Rend 2 would have been better with the Lances. So we'll see. Maybe that's a typo. Maybe I'm missing something.
He might be using it more as a pinning unit, pin and then shoot over like behind it to try to grind you out that way, as opposed to
the rest of the army doesn't support that though, right? Like those strikes are going to die and give up points. I'm very interested to see what it does. I really, really want to see Kharadron evolve, and we might be waiting for a while for a battle tome.
Yeah.
So
it's how they use the Drake. Like everything else, like I understand how Geremy is gonna be using each of the pieces, but the guard again, does he hold it back and use it as a counterattack piece? Does he throw them in and pin, like again, like what you said previously, 2 guard isn't tanky enough to pin some of the high output units out there. So I'm interested to see how he deploys that.
Especially because 2 guard is 2 victory points. If your opponent does it correctly, they can just like drawing blood, right? It's like kill one, weaken the other one, and then just finish it off casually whenever you want.
Yep.
1 guard is not scary as a hammer, so you can leave it alive. Yeah. So I'm very interested to see what Geremy does with this. Next up, we have Jiwan playing Gloomspite Gitz, and he has 72 models and 145 wounds, and no battle regiment in sight. So let's break down, because he's got 4 units. One of them is reinforced outside of a battalion, right? Just mad lad. So let's break it down here. He's got a Fungoid Cave Shaman with Hand of Gork. That's like every Gitz list needs the teleport, right? You've got a Dankhold Trogbost who's got Arcane Tome with Ghost Mist. I don't understand that pick at all. Like, not even a little bit. Madcap Shaman with Itchy Nuisance and Moonface Amulet. Itchy Nuisance, I believe, is the Fight Last spell.
Correct, yeah.
And then he's got a Marsh Crawler Sloggoth, which I'm not that familiar with Kruleboyz, so I'm not sure what it's doing in this list necessarily.
Yeah.
Then he's got nine Rockgut Trogs, which are good.
Yeah.
Rockgut Trogs are legit a good unit in any army.
-2/3 damage.
Yep, and they whip rocks too. They're like,
yep,
they're actually a good unit. And when you double reinforce them, it's enough wounds that your opponent has to dedicate serious resources into killing them. Like, I think not even 4 Fulminators is enough to kill 9 Rockguts on average. Like, Ren 2 cuts through them, but they've got the ward and just tons of wounds, right?
5 of them, yep.
Yeah, and unfortunately they can't unleash because their rock throwing ability is an ability. It's not a missile weapon.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, they can run and still do it. So there's pros and cons. On top of that, he's got 2 units of Fanatics, 2 units of Shudas, 6 more Troggoths, whipping more rocks at you. And then, like your list, he's got the Ripper Snarl things in there.
Yeah.
And the Scuttle-Tide, which is... everybody
annoying.
Seems to forget the Scuttle-Tide can just deploy anywhere on the table, pretty much.
It's the most annoying piece. It's endless spell. Just nickel and dimes you throughout the thing and just blocks movement and that sort of thing.
So he's got a mix, right? He's got a little bit of speed with the Snarlfangs, not a lot, but he's also got a teleport. He's got good melee hammers, right? If those Rockguts connect before they get wiped out, which is the struggle with them, is that they're not fast and they're just not fast and they're not that durable.
Yeah, they're just not fast. Yeah.
They're somewhat durable. The 5-up ward is good. It increases their wounds pretty well from like 4 per model to 6 per model, but they're still just a 5-up save and they're just slow. So if they can hit you first, and I think this is where having 2 big units of them is, like your opponent could reliably kill one, but then that leaves the other one still up, which can connect. Especially if you screen, which a lot of times when people play Rockguts, they're playing like thematically appropriate lists and they don't bring stuff like 20 Shudas to screen for them.
Shudas, yeah.
As a counterpunch unit, Rockguts are like perfect, right? They've got range, they've got high rend, high damage. They're really, really good for that role. Now, of course, that style works if you have shooting to force the enemy to come to you. Without it, you're moving up in the middle and then hoping for a double, pretty much. Which you're not going to get when you have 11 drops and your opponent forces you to go first every single time. So that's going to be a big struggle for this list.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because he basically has a double screen prior to you getting to the Rockguts. So the Loon Smashers will be within the Shudas, and so they'll deploy them outside during your charge phase. You charge, they fight first, potentially kill whatever charged, they have that screen there. And then if you double them, you go into the shooters, leaving the rock guts fairly safe behind them. So it's interesting that, again, like you said, a lot of people who play trolls play a thematic list with all trolls, but you don't have the screening potential that this list has.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, as well as the Marsh Colossus Logoth, is actually such a good ally because it has a +1 to hit in an aura that's not limited by Kruleboyz. It just says allied units.
Just friendly units. +1 hit.
Friendly units, yeah.
Wow. That's
so those
crazy
rock
good.
guts are all two up, and since you have 2 units, you can't buff them with all-out attack each. So you can all-out defense them so that they're 4-up save instead, and always have that +1 to hit. Ghost Mist, I don't totally understand.
It should have been flaming weapon, right? Or even levitate.
Yeah. I think what he's attempting to do is Ghost Mist his own Loon Shrine,
and then, but it's already so big, you can't see through it anyway.
And then if you deploy your rock guts inside, you Ghost Mist it, and because you still go through the piece, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of weird interaction with that. That's the only thing I can think of. I would never take Ghost Mist ever.
I'm pretty sure he's going to be casting Mystic Shield every turn.
Yeah, I think maybe that's just a troll choice, thematically, troll choice for him.
Just needs a bridge.
Moonface Amulet is choose something within 6, and it's -1 to your save. So couple that with the -2 that the rock guts already have, you're looking at -3 on something that impacts the Troggoths. So it's quite a punchy list.
Doesn't the Madcap Shaman signature spell, I think it also reduces save rolls, right? But it's short range, if I remember correctly.
I think no, it's -1 to shoot now. It has been changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't played against a Madcap Shaman since the book came out, so I didn't keep up with the errata.
I was running one in my Iron Jaws for quite some time to protect my
-1 save spell. So good.
Yeah.
So
and then he can recur those rock guts half a unit. So the 9-man unit becomes 5, and then the 6-man unit becomes 3 when you do end up destroying it. So it does have a little bit of recursion, and I think Noah's gonna put the shrine fairly close to the objective so that he can be secure in knowing that if you throw something into the rock guts, he can cover his bases. Because when you recur a unit, it's outside of 3, not outside of 9 like it usually is. So interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's so hard to rely on terrain pieces though when monsters can just smash them easily, and Kragnos exists who does it passively, right?
Yep.
Very interesting, because I know this player is good. I've seen his results at other events, and I know he's a good player. And I've spoken with Mergonk, who's a co-host on the channel. He is a good player, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt here.
He's a wild man, though. Knowing Noah personally, he's a wild man, and so he does some crazy things. So we'll see.
We will see. I don't like any spell that relies, or any list that relies on spells, because unless you're tech list, it's unreliable. Or Seraphon, I'd give it Seraphon reliability on that. But yeah, that's about it. Interested to see how this performs, because it's not the Gavin list that he won 5-0 with at his last event.
Yep.
It's a very different approach, so I'm very curious to see how it does. And it doesn't have Kragnos. Gitz are doing well without Kragnos. It's a good time to be alive, right? Next up here we have Jordan Duncan from Season of War, giving one final hurrah to the second edition, technically first edition, Idoneth Deepkin Battle Tome, running Fuethan. That's how you get it. I got it. Nailed it. Battle Regiment with Eidolon of the Storm, using Cloud of Midnight, which is the once per battle this unit can't be shot, and then you combo that with the Idoneth ability to just not be shot unless you're the closest thing. But I think they errated that, right? Like, so if you stick the Storm up front and you use Cloud, then you can shoot the next thing? Or am I wrong about that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Or I think it was an FAQ, not an errata, but...
FAQ.
Yeah, then he's got Tidecaster, which as your general can reverse the tides, which is really good with Fuethan, because then they can high tide fight you first on turn 2. It's got Born from Agony, which is I think just a wound bonus. Steed of Tides is the hero teleport spell. I've been looking at the new Idoneth book, so I'm just trying to remember everything from the second edition one.
Yeah.
The Soul Scryer is the deep strike guy. He gets 2 units in reserve with him that can pop out on a table edge, and then he gives those units +3 to charge the turn they come out, so they're on a 6-inch rerollable charge, because in the 2nd edition Battle Tome, Guard still had rerollable charges. And then he's got a little bit of a shooting castle setup going on here on top of that. So he's got 40 Reavers, 10 Thralls, and a Leviathan with Reverberating Carapace. And I think that was the Broken Realms update. That was the increased range on the drums.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Nailed it. And then he's running Hold the Line, because it's not. What else are you going to run, right? Like.
Yeah. Potentially you could run Prize Sorcery, but
this is a rough choice. That's a really rough choice, because Reavers and Thralls are not hard to kill.
No.
And at this event, there's going to be a lot of players trying to go 5-0 or 4-1 at least, and the tiebreaker grand strategy is actually going to really matter. So the Hold the Line, I wonder. Maybe I'll just ask him how much thought went into that, because I was torn on the grand strategy personally. I couldn't figure out which one I wanted.
That's the same with me. My list is very similar to this in that I only have the Bolt Boys as my battle line, and I have Hold the Line as well.
That's rough.
So
if you're gonna win, it's fine. But the risk is that as you're like, that's the thing I want to kill playing a shooting list. That is the thing I want to take out anyway, right? So not only am I going to score broken ranks off it, I'm also going to deny you your grand strategy. And even if you win the game, you're going to come away from it without a grand strategy, which is really
that's where kind of I struggled as well. It's difficult in that, like, if you take Predator's Domain, like some of the other players were doing, it's like when you win, you guarantee it, but when you lose, you might not. It might be the same thing where you might not be able to guarantee that you get it.
None of the grand strategies are particularly appealing. It all feels like if somebody just wants to be a jerk and a poor sport, they can ruin it for you.
Very much so.
And they don't even matter in casual games.
Some armies can just do it though.
Oh yeah,
like
have you seen
Lumineth with Prize Sorcery? Yeah.
Fire Slayers have
Invocation.
Awesome. Yeah.
And then just plant a wall.
Yep. And the wall, unlike every other invocation in the game, doesn't auto dispel itself. so it's like
you would need a priest in order to remove it.
Yep. And who's gonna waste a prayer on that? Never.
Yeah. Just to deny you a grand strategy. No, it's more of a that's a move to spite your opponent. Like it's not a game plan to win you a game. If you try to unbind, it's out of spite. Yeah.
So back to Jordan's list. I'm actually really glad he's bringing Idoneth, because most of the games I've had against Jordan were against his Idoneth, and they're always the best matchups, because he really understands this army and every single piece in it, how to get the most out of every single unit, positioning them to block my shooting. The boat placement is always excellent. He's an excellent player. I'm really I hope I get matched up against him. It would be great to see him.
And the output of this army is insane in shooting.
Yeah, Reavers are what, like
hit.
Yeah,
2 shots apiece at 18-inch range, so 40 shots at 18 inches, -1 damage, +1 from the Leviathan, so there'll be 2s to hit. Rerolling 1 on Flood Tide. So if he flips the tide, it'll be round 1. He gets to reroll hit rolls of 1.
Yep.
So 2s rerolling once. And then 2s to wound because of the Eidolon of the Storm.
Yep. All of that's going away in 3rd edition.
Correct.
All the rerolls, all the bonuses to wound on shooting, that's all gone in the next book. So this is this list is going to get weaker in a week. Actually, the day of the event, this list is just nerfed dramatically.
Yeah, but because list submission was previous, I was surprised that he took this list. Jordan, has been playing Stormcast for a little bit with kind of great success as well. So
I think this list is going to struggle with other melee armies. The game is really fast right now, and I don't know how it's going to deal with very aggressive melee armies, right? Or things that can just deploy out of your shooting range.
You're relying on the Echelon Guard, I think, to screen, and 3 Echelon Guard is not a huge footprint.
No, it's not. Even if you put them long ways, it's still 6 of them is not that much against translocating Stormcast or even just any kind of deep strike shooting, which there's a lot of, and there's going to be more of. There's 2 Daughters of Cain lists, 2 Stormcast lists that rely on it. it's rough to get the surface area and the coverage you need. I feel
Yep.
like the Reavers are going to be exposed at some point, or he's going to have to deploy really far back, or even put
Yep.
the Reavers in reserve, in which case you can, screen them out because they have to come out on the flank, right? So you can just put screens really far out, and then that's it. That's all they're doing. They come out, they shoot, and they die.
Yep.
But we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see how he handles it. I know he's a great player, and I think he's going to do really well with it.
Yeah. That's the thing about this tournament. It's 36 players, but I would say a majority of the players are top end tournament players. People who've had great success previously, GT winners and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a very, very competitive. The lists might not look the most optimized at times, but again, the players kind of sometimes elevate the list far beyond what it looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, we've only seen like 4 Storm Drakes. Is this even a competitive event? Like, what is this?
Yeah, for sure.
Next up here, Kevin Wardrop from Knights of Pyre coming in with a Hosts Arcanum list using... It's basically Kairos and Archaon, right? That's the list. He's going to summon a few more Screamers because of his Hosts Arcanum. He's got the Dispel Scrolls on 1, 3, and 5, which games don't go to 5, so it doesn't matter. So on 1 and 3, he's got Dispel Scrolls. But Kairos and Archaon is the combo, and I don't know Kevin, I don't think. So I'm wondering if he saw the Battle Scroll update to Archaon not getting Fate Dice anymore. Maybe he's still relying on that combo, but I haven't seen this talked about in months. Am I missing something, or is my very quick summary there kind of on point?
I think you're correct. Kevin owns 2 armies. I know him personally. He has Nighthaunt and he has this list. And so when those are your 2 choices, what do you take? Even though that Archaon's not as effective in the game currently, or in Tzeentch.
Oh, is it the Kevin from X Planet?
No, not Kevin from X Planet. Okay. No, this gentleman's from Barrie as well. Okay. The interesting thing, barring Archaon's still a house in of himself, but not having Fate Dice really, really hurts him. No guaranteed charges, no guaranteed Kingslayer, Slayer of Kings. He doesn't have a spell portal.
Whoa, yeah, I wrote Emerald Lifeswarm. There's no spell portal.
No, I just double checked his list. No, he does not have spell portal.
Okay, so Kairos just dies and doesn't do anything, right?
So everything he's operating on is 18 inches. So once you're outside of that 18-inch area, I think you're pretty safe against this list. Kairos with obviously the Infernal Gateway or Gift of Change to do the 6 more wounds does so much, and then he knows everybody's spells near him. So the Thaumaturge has a d6 damage spell as well. So Kairos is doing 6 plus d6 every turn, but again, without a spell portal, it's only 18 inches.
It's like a shotgun blast, right?
Yeah, and Archaon not having access to Infusion Arcanum, which is +1 to hit and +1 to wound, is going to be not as effective as he was, we'll say.
It's got some annoying things, right? Like, I don't think this is like an impossible list to win with. It's just not meta right now. Like, it's not
what it was before. Yeah. Previous to the Battle Scroll,
especially
Battle Scroll
list. Spell portal.
Yeah.
The problem with Tzeentch right now is that Legion of the First Prince is just the same thing but better, right?
Yep.
Just better at the same thing, which is really sad.
Yeah, summoning half your charge.
The ward. You get to use Bloodslick Ground, which is like the worst ability ever designed.
Yeah. I hate that thing.
I don't even want to start arguing about rules, man. It's the worst. Like, is it a pulse? Is it an aura? Who knows? Nobody knows.
Yeah. Nobody knows.
So we're looking at drops here. This is actually the first list that hasn't been like 1, 2, or like 9. This is the middle ground here. We're seeing 6, and that's strictly because when you're running Kairos and Archaon, you can't do Battle Regiment, so you might as well do Hunters of the Heartland, and with only 3 units in the list, you don't have any troops left to do a Warlord or anything, so...
For sure.
It's out of necessity. It feels... I mean, you only have 1 hero, so what do you need extra enhancements for, right? Maybe spells?
Yeah, because both of them are unique, so they can't even take anything extra.
Levon's saying, pretty sure his New Year's resolution was not using Archaon in 2022. And he's
He's waiting for that Nighthawk Battle Tome. I know for a fact.
It's going to be good. Deep Strike shooting is coming back in a big, big way. I hope. All right, Levon. We'll see. Here we go. Levon, Russian name from Bulldog Hammer.
206 wounds.
206 wounds with 144 models. 11 drops. I'm so glad I know he's not a slow player, so I know that this isn't going to be an issue for me. Because if I saw this with anybody else, I'd be like, come on, man, what are you doing to me?
Yeah. Play till round 3 and then win. No. Levon is a member of Team Canada. And I know he's been practicing with chess clocks because AOS Worlds requires chess clocks, so he's fairly quick with this list already.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we had Levon on for a live stream when we did a really big breakdown of his LVO list, which was like, this is kind of the core of it in terms of concept. And I have a pretty good understanding of what he was trying to do. And it seems like since then, he's broken off from just running 2 big blocks of zombies, and instead he's going 60-40-20 instead of just 60-60. He's still got I think he had direwolves in there last time, fell bats. He swapped the corpse cart out, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Levin. But I'm pretty sure.
He has a +1 to cast Unholy Lodestone instead of the Balefire Brazier, which was -1 to wound. The corpse cart, I think, is only 5 or 6 wounds with a 6-up save, so you couldn't reliably protect it near your zombies. And it's such a short aura that the +1 to your casting means that it's just much more reliable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's dropped the big Gargant, which was like the big spicy piece that I really liked from his LVO list. But I understand why he did it, because the Gargant without the extra bodies on an objective is not a big presence, right? And what you get from trading it out is it looks like he's gotten Belladama, Blood Knights, and I think that's actually where the Direwolves come in. I think they weren't in his previous list. So he's got more screening, more bodies. He's controlling more of the fight, which is what he was trying to do originally, and the Gargant didn't play into it as well as this would have. So this looks like a refined version of the LVO list, and that LVO list was good. Yeah. He needs a reliable Necromancer spell. Yeah, that makes sense, the Lodestone.
Yep.
So you've still got Gorslav, Necromancer, who's got an Arcane Tome, so he's casting 2 spells a turn. Overwhelming Dread. Let's look that one up real quick, because all the spells sound exactly the same, right?
Yeah, like we were saying. The thing that I like about this list, as like more so than his LVO list, is the inclusion of Belladama. Belladama allows you to potentially control shooting. Now, it is only, unfortunately, within an 18-inch range. She has a spell that's kind of what Kairos does with D3 Mortals and then summoning wolves. I played him recently, and I realized that the spell is actually better than Kairos' spell, in that Kairos' spell is the first model that you remove from the Mortals. That's where you spawn the Chaos Spawn. This is just anywhere within 3 inches of the unit.
That's way better, because you can lock down multiple units, and your opponent doesn't get to choose, which is huge.
Yeah. So I attempted to remove one of my Hobgrots, to the opposite side of where my Bolt Boys were, but we read the rule much more deeply, and then he just spawned his wolves beside my 9 Bolt Boys, and so they were able to be charged by the Vengorian Lord afterwards. So it's a very, very good spell. And she's very hard to take down with the 10 Direwolves, because she has a 3+ pass off. So you can't even reliably target her and kill her before she gets to that 18-inch zone.
And you better kill her before those wolves are revived too. That's another problem. Even if you kill them, they're just back, right? As long as she's fighting more or less on a graveyard, she's really hard to take down. The Blood Knights add a bit more punch to this army, which is good. That's a good thing. And speed. Yeah. And they can't be tied down. That's a super important thing, is that a big problem Soulblight have is not a lot of mobility, and not just like speed, but like when I say mobility as opposed to just going far, I mean like redeployment, right? Like getting, like, I'm stuck in here because this is where my opponent wants me. Now I can go somewhere else, right? Like translocation is huge for that. Retreat and charge is huge for that. A lot of these are the abilities that win games, because AOS is won by movement. So having the Blood Knights, not being able to tie them down, gives him that element in his list, and I think that's really useful. Ghost Mist again. What?
We're missing something here.
Ghost Mist meta? Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's still got the Vengorian Lord, which did really well for him. He's not using the same artifact he had last time. Let's look up some of these enhancements because I don't play Soulblight and I want to know
Yeah.
what is going on.
So he's moved on to Verkos Dynasty, which allows the vampires in his army to reroll their casting roll.
He had that last time too, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Verkos is the werewolf guys, right?
Correct.
Yeah, he had that last time.
And then Pinions obviously makes that Vengorian Lord vroom across the field. And then Pact Alpha and the Vampire Lord means he's just casting or giving out the command ability for +1 attack without using a CP. So
it's an extra CP.
Can use it for other
more
things.
Efficient. Yeah. So Sangsaran is plus D3 attacks to a melee weapon if you charge. So more damage output on the Vengorian Lord, which is good because that's something his list was lacking, was multiple. Like I think when we talked about on a live stream, the zombies were playing simultaneously hammer and anvil, and they don't have the durability or the speed to do that. Not like Storm Drakes, which have both, right? So they can be brought back, but then it's 9 inches away, and you're hoping for Hail Mary charges. So this is a refined list. Levin, you mad lad, I'm looking forward to seeing you there and playing against this.
206 wounds, like
still not the highest.
Is it not?
It's not. It's not the highest wound count in this list. There's one that beats it, I think. I'm excited to show it. I've never seen a list like this, and I know who did it, and I'm gonna high five him when I see him.
I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, so this is why I'm really glad I did not go heavy on anti-elite shooting, and I brought in a little bit of anti-horde shooting just for stuff like this. Because for some reason, Canadians have figured out, like, we're done with the elite meta. We're moving on. We're past it, right? We're going into horde meta, baby.
Which is, I think, the next iteration of things. Again, like we were saying before, Fire Slayers can enact that game plan.
Fire Slayers, Idoneth with Thralls and Reavers, Nighthaunt are definitely a horde army. Daughters of Cain, everybody gets the gut feeling they're going back to Witch Elves. What's the next book that's coming out after that too?
I don't think we know what the other two are.
Sylvaneth and Rats. Yeah, they can both be infantry based armies, not big monster meta. So that's definitely the way the game seems to be going. If only because that's what they're releasing and people want to play what's new and hot.
For sure.
So here we have Marcella from Tough Crowd playing Daughters of Cain, Kharadron. This is a very standard Daughters of Cain list, I would say. I don't want to make it seem like he's not creative or anything. Or she. It's hard to tell from that name.
Yeah, it's she.
Okay. Marcella. So yeah. You never know, right?
Sure.
Battle Regiment, but still 2 drops because Morathi Cain and the Shadow Queen are 2 different entries in a battalion, which is that sure is a thing, huh?
It's nice that they can't fit it in a 1-drop.
It is nice. It's dumb
for your opponent,
but it's nice. So he's got Morathi Cain with Mind Razor, pretty standard. Malusai is your general, with all the stuff from Kharadron that you have to take as your general. That way you unlock snakes as your battle line. And then in terms of snakes, 10 melee, 15 shooting, pretty standard. 10 Witch Elves to round out the battle line, give you a bit of mobility and bodies. And then 2 squads of Life Takers for, again, mobility and bodies. And that's the list. And what this list does is it uses a command ability, not a spell, not a once per battle artifact. It uses a command ability to teleport Bloodstalkers in range in the movement phase. And then once they're in position, they're double tapping you in the hero phase and the shooting phase. They basically shoot like Judicators, where it's 2 shots apiece, hit rolls of 6, do 1 mortal wound. It's not even like the scariest shooting damage output, but the fact that it's like twice, it's really good against elites, not so good against 200 wounds of zombies that revive.
And it's consistent too. It's just like lockstep. It just happens every single time. And you have to somehow get to them at a certain point.
And because because they're Kharadron, they're -1 to be hit by other shooting. So this is like a shooting list that is anti-shooting at the same time, which is quite interesting. The -1 hit's not as useful as it used to be because all-out attack exists and everybody could use it. But what this list does is it'll just teleport in range to shoot the other shooting and then shoot them first, right? It's like Stormcast before they got the Battle Tome. Daughters of Cain kind of just took their place as the teleport shooting army because there was like, oh, well, you guys aren't doing it. I guess we will. Right? Somebody's got to do it. But now, as the meta evolves, it's like Stormcast just do this better, right? And Morathi people know how to kill Marathi at the competitive scene. She's a really good like pub stomper. She'll show up and people don't know how to deal with her. She'll take 3 wounds a round when people should be doing it per turn to kill her reliably at the bottom of 2. And people know how to deal with Marathi. So I'm not saying this list is bad. Daughters of Khaine are still a very strong army, but like people know this in the tournament scene. We've understood this list, this archetype, and what it's trying to do, and there are better versions of it with Stormcast, with Seraphon, arguably with Lumineth, that kind of just do the same thing but better. But with the new Daughters book, maybe they're just trying to get one last hurrah out of it. Plus, not everybody owns every army, right? So
yeah, for sure. Predator's Domain shows up again.
Yes, I told you it was frequent. This is also a 99 wound list. This is not like 80-ish like an elite army would. So it's got bodies, it's got wounds. Everything's got a 6-up ward. It's not Hagnar, so it doesn't have a 5-up against regular damage. But the -1 hit is huge because with your Life Takers, with your Marathi, with your Blood Sisters, you can screen out and protect your Stalkers against all melee, but other shooting will beat you, and that's where the -1 hit comes in. So
yeah, for sure. I'm
surprised there's no Emerald Life Swarm. I would have figured that would have made its way in here somehow.
Yeah, it's 2,000 of the nose, I think.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I'm noticing that all of the people who have taken Predator's Domain so far are from the American scene. So that's an interesting point as well.
Yes, Predator's Domain makes sense. Like I said, if you're winning, there's nothing your opponent can do to stop you from scoring it out of spite. I kind of had the same thought, but I went a different direction with it, and I'll talk about that when we get to my list. Which is it next? Nope. Okay, we got Matt Jackson from We Will Bury You, which is, for people who don't know, Barrie is a city north of Toronto, so that's a fantastic pun. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So this is our first Cities of Sigmar list, and it's not the Living City, and it's not running a whole bunch of Stormcast units. It's an actual Cities of Sigmar army.
Yes.
And I would say if you're not running Stormcast, Tempest Eye is the best.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah.
So it's running also not a 1-drop. It's going for as much value as possible. It's going for a more controlling kind of play style, making sure your opponent can't just neutralize you with roars and stomps and things of that nature. It's got a Rune Lord, which is just a nice utility piece. It also buffs up your Iron Drakes, which there's only 10 Iron Drakes, so that's kind of interesting that a lot of people go Rune Lord, General, double reinforce Iron Drakes, and then bridge with some kind of like sorceress to reliably cast it, right? That's the typical combo. Chose not to do that. So it's interesting that the Rune Lord exists. I think it's to fill out the Warlord Battalion. I think that's what it's for.
And plus to your dispels as well, so it's cheap, good dispelling piece. Yeah,
it's nice. I think he forgot to teach it a universal prayer because it could learn curse or something of that nature. I don't think I saw it in the list, so maybe that's just an omission.
Heal, maybe,
or the command point one even. Guidance.
Yeah.
It's got a free guild general on Griffin who's running Swift of the Wind, Vial of Manticore Venom. That's an artifact nobody knows what it is, but it's universal and it adds 1 to wound rolls. It's okay, right? Something wrong with it. And then Soaring Guardian, which I believe is the new one from White Dwarf, which if you die, you get just revive like a Phoenix, I think, on a 4-up.
On a 2-up.
2-up. Even better. So it's a better Phoenix, right? Griffins are just the new Phoenixes. They're so hot right
now. Unfortunately, just D3 wounds, not your full profile again. So,
but it is a full damage stop, which is really good. That's always a useful thing.
Yeah. So it denies you battle tactics, right? If you do, since it's his general, if you go slay the Warlord or bring it down on the turn that you want to do it, you can't. It just takes that option away. You have to kill it twice.
This is something I've wanted to talk about the whole time, but I keep forgetting. It comes up in my mind and then I forget about it. The way people are playing shooting right now primarily is a single large block of dudes. Reinforced usually once or twice, as much as you can, really. Like we just saw the Daughters list that had 15 snakes, and then you stack all the buffs that you can on them, and then you use some kind of like force multiplier, like a double tap or something, right? And that does tremendous damage. We see that all the time with long strike raptors. We see it with judicators. We see it with double tap snakes. We see it with Lumineth sentinels. They pour all their buffs and they delete one thing, and that works. And when you're in that kind of mindset of, well, I've got a sniper rifle and you've got a sniper rifle, whoever shoots first wins, right? And that's why Stormcast win every single time in that scenario, because we have Scions. However, The problem with that approach is AOS is a dice game, right? With the double turn mechanic. So like you can never really truly do that properly. And I think where we're going to move to is kind of like what we're seeing with people in screens, is that instead of having one large unit where you pour all your buffs into it, you disperse that power across multiple units. Because if your opponent has to dedicate all of their shooting to kill, one of your guys or one of your shooting units, well, you still have 3 left. Whereas if they were all in a single clump, all of that damage, all that overkill is now effective. Right, and I think we're going to move to a more MSU style as 3rd edition evolves naturally. There's still going to be a place for that, but I think it's going to shift away.
Yeah, the interesting counterpoint to that is if you do go MSU, you start to hit the ceiling of battle regiment, and so like there's pros and cons to either way or either approach.
And I think that's given how strong Hunters of the Heartland is, I think we're going to see a move away from battle regiment as well. Because
hopefully.
Of that. Yeah. Now suddenly, if you're Alpha Strike, like especially if you're shooting, if you run battle regiment, you force your opponent to go first. It's like, oh, I've just told him to unleash on me, right? Like that's not great. So you're going to want to go first. But if you're just charging and killing a bunch of useless screens, that's not very good either, right? So the MSU. This edition heavily favors MSU with the increased point cost.
For sure.
Very much. But we're still stuck in that like 2nd edition grind set of
mindset,
of everything has
to Death Star.
Yes, it has to be like that because big number, dice go burr, it's fun, but it's not tactically efficient.
No.
So back to the list. He's got a battle mage with wild form because he's in Gur, so he learns that, which is a common staple in Stormcast lists. We see it all the time, but I'll explain it for people who don't know. Wild form is you pick a friendly unit, not keyword locked, and give it +2 to run rolls and +2 to charge rolls. So in an army like Tempest Eye, which is able to run and shoot, and there's a lot of units in here that run and charge as well, it's a huge mobility boost. And then it's got Strike of Eagles, which I honestly forget what it does because everybody just uses Aura of Glory.
30 inches, roll 6 dice, each 4 up is a mortal wound. So a 30-inch, averagely 3 mortal wound.
Can spike high. That's long range, which is good. A little bit of. It's probably just going to cast Mystic Shield and Wild Form.
Wild Form, yeah. And then when everything has kind of gone outside your buffing ranges, then you start to use Strike of Eagles just to ping wounds off of things.
And if you combo with the Hurricanum, you could potentially like nuke something down from long range. So I like that tactical flexibility there. That's good to have.
Yeah.
In Hunters of the Heartland, it's got 2 units of Demigryph Knights, which are the melee hammers.
Yeah.
Not really, but what are you going to do?
As much as the book has, yeah.
And then 10 Iron Drakes, which I find very interesting. I guess because you got the Rune Lord, you might as well bring some shooting to tear down a screen. But there's no delivery mechanism for them, so they're. Well, you know what? Tempest Eye, run and shoot with a +3 move from the. Yeah. It's probably enough distance, right?
And good against monsters as well, right? They'll have the special weapon for D6 damage.
The problem with Iron Drakes is they have to remain stationary to do their bonus damage. So it's not ideal. Maybe more Pistoliers would have been better.
Yeah.
Anyway, then there's the real melee hammer in the list, Gotrek. Gotrek is just chilling here in a Vanguard battalion. He could have. Actually, I don't think that's right because Gotrek's not a leader. So I don't think he's valid for a Vanguard battalion. He could fit in Hunters of the Heartland, but he can't fit in Vanguard. But I think what he wants out of Vanguard is to get a free run 6 on Gotrek, but he can't. Yep. Right? Yep. He's not a leader. So I think that's a bit of a mistake.
It's weird in that he's a hero but not a leader.
Yeah, Fireslayer's got that going on too with the Rune Sons.
Yeah. I think that's kind of this is kind of the exception.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll contact the TO and say like, hey, maybe he wants to put Gotrek in Hunters. That might make it worse for me, but it's good sportsmanship and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Celestial Hurricanum, of course, rounding it out. It's got a Searstone Amulet, which I don't remember. If I don't remember it, odds are it's not that important.
Yeah, I think it's a 4-up CP.
Yeah, 4-up CP. At the start of your hero phase. That's it.
Yeah, okay. And then the Aura of Glory, obviously, +1 to attack.
Insane ability. One of the best reasons to play Cities of Sigmar is Aura of Glory.
Yep.
Fantastic. And then
currently thinking about it.
Do it, man. Living City is going to get nerfed, I hope. So Tempest Eye is still going to be hot.
Yep.
He's got Prize Sorcery as his thing here, which is interesting because he's just got a Battle Mage and a Hurricanum.
Yeah, Battle Mage and a Hurricanum, yeah.
This is
Ooh,
tough.
yeah, no. Yeah, those two pieces aren't very tanky.
No.
Yeah. I would have perhaps gone for Beastmaster, or Predator's Domain, like we were chatting about before.
I think I would have gone
Um,
for Predator's Domain here.
yeah,
Beastmaster's too risky because you only have the one monster.
yeah,
Hold the Line is too
yeah.
risky because nothing is reinforced or durable, or there's no recursion. Right? You can't
Yeah.
revive anything here. There's no good choice, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, struggle in terms of 10 drops too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not choosing first, but it's interesting. I like this list. Looking forward to meeting Matt Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, of course, the token living city list. Every event has to have one. And
Yeah.
this player, Matt Kowalik, I think it's a
Yeah.
Polish guy, from Knights of Pyre, and he appropriately named it something that I'm not going to say on live stream because I don't want to get demonetized. But
Yeah.
he understands exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
So let me break down this list for people who aren't familiar with Living City. There's
Mm-hmm.
two main things going on here. The first one is you can leave units in reserve and then deploy them on a flank, wholly within 6 inches, anywhere on the side of the table, which is cool. It's already a good enough ability. But then there's another one. After you shoot with a unit, you can spend a command point, and that unit can then make a normal move immediately. So the combo here is you put fulminators 3 inches away, or 9 inches away from an enemy. They use their 12-inch breath attack, and then they make a 10-inch move, which means then they're 3 inches away from an enemy for a charge. So you have a nearly guaranteed charge on one of the best melee hammers and the only thing like in the game. Fulminators are one of the best units in the game for this. And the
Yeah.
only thing holding them back is their movement, not reliably delivering them turn one. So now they're in a list that can reliably deliver them turn one.
Yep.
And that's a pretty gross combo. And what he's done here, in addition to that combo, he's gone with a two other things that are really good. One of them is a Rune Lord as the general unlocks Iron Drakes as battle line, which means you can double reinforce them. Iron Drakes are very efficient and high damage shooting if they don't move. So what you do with them is you cast the Soul Scream Bridge, which is an endless spell that allows you to not move the unit but teleport to the other side of the bridge, which means the Iron Drakes fire at full damage from a very high threat range and wipe stuff out. So that's that combination of things, the Fulminators getting the 3-inch charge and the Iron Drakes just wiping out whatever they want on turn one, very, very hard to deal with. And then still, he's balanced that out with a unit of 20 Phoenix Guard. Just in case you deal with his Alpha Strike, he's still got bodies to hold objectives.
Or on objectives, yeah.
And Durale is a nice little hero sniper, wizard sniper in particular. So yeah, that's a rough list. That's not the kind of list you would pick up the Cities of Sigmar Battletome and be like, oh, this looks fun. I'm going to try this concept. Nope.
No,
this is,
which is why he named it a certain way.
This is a tournament crusher, like meta list. This is refined. It's good. It's running the Life Swarm to revive Iron Drakes and Phoenix Guard, both of which are really good. It's got the Soul Scream combo. It is a little bit light on heroes, and normally, like, I would never run a list with 3 foot heroes as my only heroes because if I ever hit like Apex Predators at an event, it's just a loss, right? You can table your opponent, but you still lose. But as I said earlier in the stream, there is no Apex Predators on this. So the number of leaders and their quality is irrelevant, which is great. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is good job, Matt.
Yeah. I will say that those 30 Iron Drakes are my Iron Drakes. So
there you go. There you go. I can blame you for this. You enabled it.
Yes, I did enable this, and I think Doralia is mine as well. So, and so is the bridge. So this is partially my list, but Matt is piloting it. Yeah, and it's 109 wounds, so it's not a super elite army.
No,
and those 30 Iron Drakes are tough to deal with. They have +1 to save against shooting. They're a 3-up save against shooting. Yeah. So 4-up save is not something to scoff at 30 bodies with a Life Swarm to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with this list is that if you are a competent player and you know how to properly deal with the Fulminators and understand the exact threat range of the Iron Drakes and Bridge, you can just, like, they can't commit the Fulminators until the Iron Drakes are in range. So if you have long range shooting, which is quite common, I would say even bolt boys would suffice. You kind of force them into a position of like, who blinks first, right? And the first person to double, you kind of it's such a tough matchup from the Living City perspective. It's hard to get into the details of it. It's hard to play against other shooting armies. Like it's hard to play against other castles, is what I'm trying to say. Especially if because these fulminators aren't getting buffs, right? They wound on 3s. You can do all kinds of things reactively, like all out defense, and preemptively, because he's going to force you to go first and hope for the double. So you can stack up defenses. It's not like this is just going to win every single game. This is a strong list, but it's not an overpowered list. Well, might be overpowered.
The moment that you bring in the fulminators is, I think, will either win you the game or lose you the game.
Mm-hmm.
If, again, like you were saying, it's a game of chicken. If you deploy them too early, don't eliminate the screen, and all they can kill is something that doesn't accomplish your game plan, then they will lose, because anything on the back end will eliminate 4 unsupported fulminators.
Yeah. So
and then you have Iron Drakes left, which will kill anything that gets within range, but that's 16 inches is something that you can play around.
Yeah. The downside of going Battle Regiment here, and I understand why he did it, because he wants to force the opponent to go first, because basically just on a double you win most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, the downside of a Battle Regiment is your opponent will know exactly where your Iron Drakes are going to go. Yep. And once they know that, they know the exact threat range of the Iron Drakes, the bridge, the other side of the bridge, and then 6 inches.
Yeah.
And once they have that, you've lost the game of chicken, because they can just put everything outside of that range. If you deploy centrally, they just go in a corner, in one of the corners, right? Because they're not a high range unit at 16-inch shooting, right? That's how you beat this list, is to have shooting. I don't know how melee lists beat this. I think like mass wound lists are probably going to be okay, especially Levon's Deadwalkers. Like fulminators kill them, and then who cares? You just bring them back. Like it's not a big deal. That's a very favorable matchup, I'd say. If it depends on the scenario and the battle plan and everything. Damn Polacks, what are you going to do? So next up here, we've got one from Michael Grove playing Thunder Lizard Seraphon, which is near and dear to my heart. I still consider myself a Seraphon player despite years of Stormcast now. Running double Battle Regiment, which this is what you see with Seraphon, and it's like the big weakness of Seraphon is they can't ever get everything they want in one drop list. So double Battle Regiment, he's got Engine of the Gods, Star Master, very typical loadouts, and then 40 Skinks and a Bastiladon in one Battle Regiment, so all of that deploys at the same time. And then in the second Battle Regiment, he's got the Stegodon Skink Chief with the Prime War Beast and Beastmaster. Prime War Beast gives the mount more attacks, and then Beastmaster gives run and charge, I believe, or run and shoot.
Once per game,
which is huge because you can run 6 and still activate that. With a Skink Priest, a Skink Star Priest, 20 more Skinks, and then a Bastiladon with like the bad version of the Bastiladon, which is like barely
super cheap though at 165 points.
It fits in the list, right? So let's break it down here. The key things you need to know with Seraphon are the buffs and the units they're buffing. Right, so those 10 Skinks, they don't matter. They're a screen. They're not doing anything except screening. The Bastiladon with an Arc of Sotek, same thing. It's just a body in the way. It's not doing anything of any value. If you're spending resources on killing it for anything other than immediate objective control, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
What matters in this list, it's not the Slan, it's not the Engine of the Gods, it's not even the Stegodon or the Bastiladon. It's the Skink Priest. It's the Skink Priest and the Skink Star Priest. If you kill those two, you will probably win the game, because Seraphon have such incredibly mediocre units until they're buffed up properly, and then they are above average powerful units, right? So the Skink Priest is probably the biggest force multiplier in any army anywhere. He's insanely strong in what he does. So the first thing he does is he has a command ability you activate in the hero phase, not in shooting or combat, to give a unit +1 hit until your next hero phase, right? So that works really good on Seraphon type monsters, which have a mix of shooting and melee, but then it also still works on Unleash Hell, any scenario where you would be rolling a hit roll. It's very efficient. The second thing he does, and this is the far more important thing, is as I Prayer on a 3-up. He picks a unit, and it gets +1 to save rolls, which is like, okay, that's already good. But then it also can run, shoot, and charge in the same turn, which is fixing the core weakness of Seraphon, that their guns are 24 inches strapped to the back of 5-inch monsters.
Yeah.
5-inch move monsters. When you can suddenly add an extra 6 inches to that, you can compete with the 30-inch shooting in the game. And that's what makes Seraphon a top-tier army right now. It's the Skink Priest allowing a unit to run and charge. That's what makes them so scary. So if you kill the Skink Priest, you have an exact threat range from the Bastiladon that you don't, because they can't teleport in Thunder Lizard, right? That's another scary thing, but they can't do that here. And if you kill the Star Priest, the Skinks do nothing for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Because what the Skink Star Priest does, he does two things. He's got the Hand of Glory spell, which is a reroll hit 1 effect, which is very rare these days. Very good to have that. But the most important thing the Skink Star Priest does is you pick any Skink keyword unit, which is almost everything in this list, just not the Slan. And every time it makes a wound roll of 6, it's a mortal wound in addition to its regular damage.
Mm-hmm.
So what this list is going to do is it's got multiple threats that you stack both of those Skink Priest buffs on, and then just blow your load with those units. And then when they die, you just stick it on another unit, right?
Yeah, and you just cycle.
Yeah. So the Bastiladon is going to get +1 hit. It's going to run 6, and then it's going to shoot 24 inches. So a 37-inch threat range, which is really hard to stop. And then it's going to shoot again because of the command ability, both of which are at +1 hit, right? And even though that's on 3s and 3s, Rend 1, that's still going to average out to a lot of damage because it's 2 damage a shot. That while he's doing that, his Stegodon Chief is moving up, who is going to buff the 30 Skinks on the next turn with +1 attack, and the wound rolls of 6 cause mortal wounds. So like those 30 Skinks are going to do an explosive number of mortal wounds, and you will never see it coming. So but the problem is if you try to kill the Skinks, they're going to save stack a whole bunch and then rally and then battle shunt immunity. It's like you have to put a lot of damage to kill the Skinks. It's easier to kill the support pieces, because if you kill the Star Priest, the Skinks do no damage.
Yep.
And now, with 3rd edition, thankfully, Seraphon have another way to get mortal wounds, which is Curse. So the Engine of the Gods recently, let's say, got the Priest keyword, which means now it can take Curse. And Curse is a 9-inch range, pick an enemy unit, and hit rolls of 6 against it, you have another mortal wound of 6. So your 30 in addition, yeah. So your 30 Skinks will do hit and wound rolls of 6 cause mortal wounds, which is a crazy volume fire.
With 60 shots and possibly 90 melee attacks on top if you get +1 attack. So it will kill anything.
Yep. So the thing is, though, those Skinks, you can spend all your time trying to kill 30 wounds with the Skinks, or you can just kill the support pieces while staying out of range of Curse. Like, it's way easier to kill a Star Priest than it is to kill 30 Skinks. Especially because Seraphon players love to hide them inside their temple, and then that's just exposed to everything in the world, right? Like, it's got -1 hit and cover, but it's 4 wounds, right? Like, it's not hard to kill a 4-wound hero.
No.
So that's what's going on with this Thunder Lizard build. I would say this is the more standard version of what we're going to see for Thunder Lizard for a little while. Previously, instead of Skink Swarms, we saw Salamanders, but since their point increases and we're moving into a Horde meta where you need more screens, we're seeing more Skink blobs like this. And then the Life Swarm brings them back to life, right? Like it's
like don't spend your time on the Skinks.
No,
like not worth it.
We do a series on our channel called How to Counter Everything, and I think the next one is going to be about Seraphon, because I feel like they're not due for a book, and it's one of those armies that's like so many things are going on. You really need somebody to break down every single unit, say, this is what this unit looks like, here's a picture of it, here's what it does, here's why it has to die. And then here's a Bastiladon. Don't attack it. Just ignore it. It does no damage in melee. Just throw your battle line into it and fight it for the rest of the game. So, good list. I kind of like the other Seraphon list more, and I'll explain why when we get there. But this is good, for sure. And, I misspoke. This one has less wounds than Levon's list. I thought it was over 200.
Yeah, I was thinking that this was the list of your time.
I think
189,
Yeah, it's a Bone Splitters list. 189 wounds with a double
14
Warlord.
drops.
14 drops. Oh my god.
Yeah.
So he's got double warlord. So it's first of all, it's Icebone, which is wound rolls
Mortal
of 6
wounds.
cause a mortal
Yeah.
wound in addition. So
Yep.
tons of dice, tons of mortal wounds. Right.
Yep.
That's the concept here.
Mhm.
He's running double warlord to get an extra artifact and an extra spell, which you don't typically see extra spells as
Oh
an
yeah.
artifact of choice.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he's got 4 savage big bosses.
Yeah.
He's got a big boss. He's got a Wargog Prophet who's got Power of the Wereboar and Glowy Green Tusks. Now I believe one of those increases the rend of mounts by 2.
Yeah. Glow green tusks.
And
Yeah.
then the other one gives +1 to wound.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But you can shoot, but doesn't matter when you don't have any shooting.
exactly. Especially because if you look at the melee units this guy is running, you've got Savage Boarboy Maniacs, Savage Boarboy Maniacs, Savage Boarboys. Like it's all these pigs that are going to benefit from both of those spells.
Yep.
Backed up by 8 Savage Big Stabbas, which are
Yes.
not shooting, but they're not shooting, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
so that's the list. It's a bunch of Savage Big Bosses. Which, what do you shoot if you're playing against this list? What do you kill? No matter what you pick, it's the wrong choice.
Yeah, it's so much wound density. The interesting about the big bosses is like, why would you run 4? It's because when you activate with 1, you choose another unit, and so you choose another big boss. You activate with that one, and then you choose another one. And so 4 big bosses basically are 1 unit because you activate them one after another, and then you activate another unit after that. And so it becomes this weird amalgamation of a unit but split into 4, so you're unable to just kill it right off the bat because you're spending your time killing a 6 wound hero and you still have 3 more. The other thing is the whole or half of the army moves 8 prior to the game starting, so all of those maniac board boys are going to be on objectives, are going to be blocking up, charging lanes and the like. So, and on a crucial turn in melee, if you do try to deal with it in melee, he can get a 4-up ward with a Wa, and so he can survive any list's melee output for 1 turn.
Yep, and against shooting, you've got the speed to engage with them on turn 1.
Yeah, it's
a strong list, and it's definitely set up to counter an armor meta because of all the mortal wounds you're going to be popping out with Icebone. And Rend 2 attacks with the horns on a mount. It's so much redundancy, right? Like so many different squads of boars, so many different big stabbers, so many big bosses.
Yeah.
It's this is what we've been talking about throughout the whole stream. Is like this is where the game is going to go. Where if everybody's playing units that can just pick a unit and wipe it off the board, but just pick one, right? Like Lumineth got to pick the one thing to kill. Stormcast got to maybe pick 2. Then just play against people who have 10 things you need to kill. And suddenly you don't care which one they pick, right? That's how the Phoenician list at LVO did so well because of that exact concept. It just had redundancy and everything was disposable.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing Mike again. I haven't seen him in a while, so
he's a crazy man. Yeah.
Yep. This is Mad Lad list. I love it. Really love it. See, when I saw Bone Splitters, I was like, oh, cool, Kragnos and Bone Splitters. Can't wait to see how that turns out. No. It's not Kragnos. Not at all. Oh, man. And then Mitch.
I think it's the same concept as well, where there's no thing. His whole list is 2 War Scrolls.
His list is 0 deployment. Everything's in reserve. And it's all 1 drop. So he's going to put nothing on the table and say, go ahead, have the first turn. And then he's going to hope for a double.
And the thing about this list as well, I've seen it played a couple times. Actually, I commentated on one of the games. I filmed one of his tournament games and commentated on top of it. Is there's 2 ways you can run this list, and it's you can change your game plan on the fly. Pun intended. One is because you're in Drowned Men, you're able to move 8 inches pre-game. So you move 8 inches pre-game, then move 8 inches, and then charge. So 16 plus charge means you can pin armies that don't have the output against you.
Yep.
For the armies that do have the output against you, you null deploy and give them first, and then try to double them. And so it has this two different game plans. You can't predict what he's gonna do until he does do it. So
yeah, it's got that tactical flexibility that I like so much, and I didn't expect to see from Nurgle. And then as soon as I saw this list, I'm like, when was the last time Stormcast were able to put everything in reserve? And how bad was that for the game?
And everything has a 5-up board, so
8 wounds, it's 4-up save.
Yeah, it destroys your math. If you're a person who's very practiced at doing math on the fly and looking at average damage, the 5-up just completely throws that out the window. And you have to dedicate either too much output to kill something or not enough output. And Nurgle heals, so you could just leave things on 1 wound. Yeah.
And not just that, the longer it survives, the more the diseases stack up. When playing against Nurgle, what you want to do, let me put it this way: what Nurgle wants to do is fight in the longest combat possible. If they could spend 5 turns in the combat phase with you, they would do it, because that's the best thing ever for them. And so as the other player, you have to not give them that. So what you have to do is you have to be decisive and wipe out 1 unit at a time and completely avoid combat with the other ones. Right. Now the problem with that is, with a fast list like this, you open up the board for them for normal movement, right? Because Nurgle's not a redeploy army. They can't retreat and charge. They can't do all these fancy movement shenanigans. Once they're stuck in, they're stuck in. But that's what they want. So if you're not giving it to them, you're giving them mobility options, which is something you never want to do in this game. You always want to lock things down and control the flow of the battle. So it's good. It's deceptively good. And Mitch is a mad lad, and I look forward to seeing him again. Do you know what these enhancements are off the top of your head?
Yeah. So overpowering stench is units within 7 aren't able to receive commands.
Yep, that's a good one.
Command abilities.
Really good against Fire Slayers.
And Split Horn Helm is a 4-up ward.
Okay. Yeah. So the guy who's shutting off commands is also really hard to shut down.
Kill. Correct. Yeah.
Makes sense. But it's only 7 inches, so if you drop him in, you have to get the charge off with him.
Correct.
And a big problem with this list is, if you do the null deployment, only 1 unit gets to reroll a charge, right? And I don't think they get a +1 to charge, not like they used to.
They don't.
No.
Yeah, they do have mortal wounds on the charge as well, so it has a deceptive amount of mortal wounds on the charge as well.
Well, when you have 5 units, you're probably going to make 1 or 2 of those charges, right?
Yeah.
You're going to pin something.
Yep. For sure. And
hold the line makes sense here, by the way. Makes perfect sense. And Bloodthirsty, right? Because you can only reroll charge with 1, so Bloodthirsty is the second one. Makes perfect sense.
And then 1960, a lot of the times he'll have that.
Most of the time, I'd say,
yeah.
And then, this is my list that I'm using, which is a... Can you figure out what it does, Carl? I'd like to see your analysis of it before I say anything.
Yeah, sure. So I was interested to see what you were going to take in terms of your Stormcast list, because there's so many variations to Stormcast list that you can take. Like we already saw Anthony in his castle-like list. You could take 4 Stormdrake Guard and 4 Fulminators and run it that way. So when I saw your list, I was kind of surprised, let's say, but kind of having run down all these lists and kind of seeing your thoughts and
you see where my mind's at.
Yeah, it's one of those lists that don't have again, it's multiple threats and it's multiple small units, and so when you put effort into killing one, you either overkill it or underkill it. And Celestial Warbringers, correct me if I'm wrong, you can roll 1 hit roll, wound roll.
1 hit, per wound, or unit. Save. Not per unit, per army. So it's really not good.
Okay, so I thought it was per unit, so that taking multiple Night Judicators meant that you're able to guarantee basically the damage from it.
I wish.
But the Arcanum on Torolon with a +1 means that all your Judicators just 2+2+ -3 damage.
Yep.
And if somebody's relying on small heroes, you can just point gaze, and if they castle up, you can just do multiple mortal wounds.
Oh yeah. Fun things fun things about Gaze, it ignores the Idoneth ability to not get shot because it's not a shooting attack. Also, it doesn't specify you can't, so you can use it while you're within 3 inches of an enemy. So even if you do manage to tie down the Night Judicators, I can still blast all the support heroes off the board with 4 Gazes.
Yeah. And you have quite a few Gryph-hound units that can just tag objectives and trade. So
I love the disposable Gryph-hounds, like you wouldn't believe. I missed it so much. Going from 2nd edition, where I had like 1 or 2 of them from a Lord Castellan or Veritan or whatever, and going into 3rd edition, where like those don't count anymore.
They're like tied together.
I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started playtesting this. They're so useful. Man, they're useful. And their warning cry is better than it's ever been. And and looking at the list that I'm playing against at this tournament, I'm very, very glad I have it, because warning cry is going to ruin some of these lists. For people who don't know, when you deploy a unit in range within 12 inches from reserve or from summon, within 12 inches of a Gryph-hound unit, that Gryph-hound picks 3 Stormcast units to shoot at the unit that just deployed. So if you have, for example, the previous list with all the Drowned Men, all the Blight Kings, if one of those units deploys within range of 3 Gryph-hound units, because when you have this many Gryph-hounds, they're my front screen. If he deploys within 12 inches, so deep strike charge range, I will get, for each of those Gryph-hound units, I'll get to pick 3 Stormcast units to shoot with.
It'll be 9.
9 of them shooting, 2 shots apiece on 2s and 2s, because it's not like Unleash Hell where I have -1, and the Toralon effect lasts until my next turn. So it's 18 shots on 2s and 2s, rend 3 damage apiece.
3 damage, yeah.
And those 2 squads of Blight Lords are just going to be devastated by this. And it's every time a unit sets up within range of those Gryph-hounds. So like, if he deploys a Lord of Affliction and 2 Blight Lord units, I shoot all 3 of them 3 times.
Yeah.
So the threat is just so huge, you cannot deploy within 12 inches. You just can't do it. You lose the game if you do.
Drop and charge to try to take a point from you or that sort of thing. And then you have the Fulminators there. Obviously, they are there for the counter punch when you try to deal with the rest of the list.
That's right. So like I've been saying, the big problem a lot of lists run into right now with shooting is like, it's so obvious to get 6 long strike raptors, double tap them, and kill whatever you need to kill. But then what happens after that? Well, defensively, a shark flies by and shoots its harpoon and kills half your unit. Another one does it. Like, you just lose, right? But if you try that tactic against the Night Judicators, it doesn't really work, because you might kill 1 or 2, but there's still half the unit alive effectively. So I think it's solving a problem that people hadn't even realized existed yet.
Yep. And the Judicators with Bullstorm definitely do with a special weapon, do the most damage of any of the Judicator variations.
Well, they're the highest damage shooting period in the Stormcast army. 5 Judicators with Boltstorm crossbows, without a doubt the highest, even against 3-up saves, which you'd think with no rend crossbows you wouldn't, but no, they just
throw so much dice at them. The
other thing I wanted to mention here, because we've been talking about grand strategies, I went with Dominating Presence, which shout out to Magonk. He tipped me off on this. There's 9 units here, but remember that each of these units creates another unit of Gryph-hounds. So there's actually 13 units in my starting army, because the rules say any units added to your army before the first battle round begins are part of your starting army. So if I deploy my Judicators on the ground, the Gryph-hounds are part of my starting army. So Dominating Presence, for people who don't know, if at the end of the game I've destroyed more units, or like if I have more units from my starting army than my opponent has units from their starting army, I score it. So the way Stormcast play is exactly that. It's to just kill you or get you to cripple you so badly that you concede, right? Now, if you are playing with like 6 or 7 units, Dominating Presence is a really lousy one, because if you just lose 4 units, you might not be able to score it at all if your opponent taps out too soon, let's say. And you don't want to be the poor sport who's going to be like, no, we have to play it out for my grand strategy. Like, who's going to do that, right? But if you have, like this list here, 13 units in my starting army, even if you kill 4 or 5 screens, I'm still going to have way more units than you, even before I start killing you. So that was my thought with the Dominating Presence, is that if I'm winning games, it's a freebie. And if I'm losing games, well, the tiebreaker
run your or you could also run your Gryph-hound circles away from things.
Also, fun interaction there with Call for Aid. Call for Aid creates a replica of the unit that died. which means if
Oh,
my
it
Liberators,
counts.
yes, if my Liberators die, they count towards Dominating Presence as well.
Yeah, it's not a new replacement unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Cool.
I've done a couple test games with it. I kind of had to put it together pretty quickly for the event, and I'm curious to see how it goes.
Mhm.
And coming up next, Prentice,
Yeah.
Lozon from Critical Hit, which is out in Oshawa. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that store. It's got a great like pub atmosphere and a game store all built into one.
for sure.
Playing Daughters of Cain, but playing Keltnar rather than Kharadron.
Yeah.
So Kharadron is the meta choice because it gives you protection against other shooting, and
Mhm.
it gives you the teleport, which is so important when you're playing your Blood Snakes, right?
Mhm.
When you play Keltnar,
But it is the exact same list, though.
yeah,
That is to say, yeah.
the exact same unit choices. I think
Yeah.
the only enhancements that are different is that there's a Hag Queen here with Catechism of Murder. Marathi knows all the spells, so she doesn't have to have one, right? You don't have to pick one. And she's unique, so you can't pick the universals. So there's no reason to specify a spell in the previous list. The only difference is you're playing a different subfaction, right? The list is the same otherwise.
Mhm.
Instead of getting the teleport, which is oh so valuable, you get to summon some life takers.
Correct. Or heart renders. You have a choice.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as well as those Blood Sisters, the melee snakes get +1 attack.
Okay, that's good. If they get to attack, that's great. Usually they just die before they get to do anything, right?
It is, I believe, retreat and charge as well is available to the subfaction. So you get the +1 attack when you charge, and then you get a retreat and charge. So again, the problem becomes you have to get there. And with so many shooting lists, the Blood Sisters, I don't think will get.
And without the protection from Kharadron, I don't think the Blood Stalkers are gonna survive very long either.
Or get
to shoot.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm wondering if there's something I'm missing about it with how they use the life takers or heartbenders.
It's much more damage than the previous list, but not as much tech, I would say, is kind of the summation of that list. But it still has the same moving parts. Marathi's still a house. The life takers are incredibly fast and are missiles in and of themselves. When you're able to put Mind Razor, they're 3 damage -2 on the charge, +1 attack. So those things will kill anything. And they're only 70 or 80 points each. So you're not scared to trade those pieces. So he has good trading pieces. But we'll see if he can get them into position. That's kind of the whole crux of his list.
You said it has more damage and less utility, but the way the game is right now, damage is a form of utility, right? Like if your list doesn't have the damage to kill a Gargant every turn, you're not going to win.
Yep. And this list definitely does.
It does, yes. I'm not sure about the other one. The other one might not get there.
No.
We've got one here from Ridge. Ridge is an excellent Thunder Lizard player, and I talked to him. I talked to him briefly about his choices here, and they all make sense, and it's exactly where I was thinking Seraphon were going to go. Still playing Thunder Lizard because the -1 damage is insanely strong right now.
Good.
As long as Stormcast are prevalent, the -1 damage will be relevant. Maybe less now with Thralls, right, doing 1 damage apiece against all these skinks, and Fire Slayer's just pumping out mortals. It might not be as relevant, but it's still good. Now the problem Thunder Lizard was having going into this new meta with Storm Drakes is that it didn't have the damage to kill Storm Drakes. Even 2 squads of Salamanders reinforced weren't enough to kill Storm Drakes reliably.
Not reliably, no.
No. And everything else in Seraphon is Rend 1, which is pathetic. Like you bounce off them. So if you have this mega popular thing and your list can't beat it, well, you have to adapt. And the way I saw Seraphon adapting was with Curse and the Star Priest, like I talked about in the previous list.
Yep.
So what you do is you try to debuff an enemy with Curse and then buff up your skinks with the Star Priest and all the other stuff. And you can see Ridge, this mad lad here, didn't even go Bolt Spitters on the big unit, right? He went clubs and bucklers. So he is just trying to club you to death with 30 skinks, which can happen because they are AH move, they run 6, and then they charge with a reroll. And on turn 1, if he's not doing that, he's going to be shooting you with the Stegodon and the Bastiladon that's still double tapping. Like that's still here in this list.
Yep.
And where the final piece of the puzzle comes in here is the Pterodons. So the Pterodons are here as a counter to the save meta, because on a 2+, each of those deals D3 mortal wounds if they pass over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Which is huge. Now, it doesn't work with a run move anymore. It has to be a normal move, and Pterodons are kind of fragile, which is an unfortunate change. But yeah, that's really good against Kragnos. It's really good against Stormcast. It's a form of mortal wounds that Seraphon can do that doesn't rely on a support hero existing, because everybody should know, or a spell, which is huge, right? Because Stormjace and Kragnos both ignore spells. So when you combine all these sources of mortal wounds together, you get a list that keeps all the best things about Thunder Lizard, but can also deal with the current meta, while also adapting to just having tons and tons of bodies, which seems to be the new thing going forward.
Yep.
I'm really surprised about the clubs and bucklers. I would have sworn bolt spitters, right? Like, just make them disposable.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Mirage owns a ton of skinks, so that might be correct. How he's been running it, kind of in our testing games, is club and bolt spitters for even more damage.
Yeah,
so I'm not quite sure. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure if he made an error there, or he's trying something out. Because Ridge has been playing Seraphon for quite some time, and he might be trying different pieces and different combinations.
So it's got double Warlord, 11 drops. This list can play first or second with the long range on the Bastiladon and the Stegadon shooting and the Slan, right? You can unbind anywhere. You can drop meteors everywhere. It's got the range and the range projection to go first or second. If your opponent forces you to go first, you say okay, you shoot, and then brace for the double, minimum amount of resources on objectives. And if they decide to go first, you've got the resilience to weather it with the Thunder Lizard. Usually,
and then on a double turn, you absolutely rinse them.
It hurts. It hurts real good. Another thing, sorry about the Pterodon riders, because you don't see Pterodon, so I want to talk about them. They're also really high volume. So if you're like, one of the problems with Seraphon right now is they don't do volume well. When it was the Salamander builds, they didn't deal volume damage. So like 60 zombies would have just rolled over them. But now you can see 30 skinks. You've got, in addition to the Bastiladon and Stegadon, and then Pterodon riders are actually surprisingly high volume attackers. They can deal well with no armor save models, whereas the rest of the list seems to be built with high saves. This is built with, well, what if I face Levon and his 120 zombies? Well, there you go. You've got an answer to that too.
Yeah, 6d6 attacks from the bolas, and then multiple beak attacks afterwards too when you get into combat. So quite a bit of low rend attacks.
Yeah. So this is great. I heard Ridge had to bow out of the event, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunate.
I was really looking forward to seeing this, and I was actually hoping this would go 5-0 and kind of signal to everyone that Seraphon is changing. We're done with Salamanders. We're over it. And as a result, then the whole metagame would probably change, because Seraphon kind of drive a lot of stuff behind the scenes that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Andrew in the chat says, maybe Ridge pulled a Carl with the list upload. I think he's talking about the club and buckler there.
Yeah. Andrew was the TO for when I put my spell portal / Soulscream bridge, so that's the reference there. Gives me a hard time every single time.
Did he let you fix it, or did you just change the meta?
No, I just went. It's an honest mistake. Lists are out, so I just played it as is.
Good on you. Good on you. All right, Roger Barker, our brave soul, is playing Khorne, Reapers of Vengeance. He's going 10 drops here, Warlord and Hunters, which makes sense. That's a great combo. Surprisingly beefy Khorne, 124 wounds, right? So this is, I mean, you could get more if you went Blood Reaver spam, but it's not a competition. You've got the Demon Prince of Khorne, which is your Blood Slick Ground anti-melee combo.
Half charge.
Let me explain that, because we've mentioned it before. But so how Blood Slick Ground works, it's a command ability you activate, and units within range of, and it's a huge range too, it's like 18 inches. They have half run and half charge rules, which is crazy good, because in this game now with redeploy, if an enemy walks within range and you redeploy, let's say you get lucky and you get a 5 or 6, even if they were 3 inches away from you, now they have a half run roll on 2d6, they're not making that charge. And that's that's every unit around the Demon Prince. It's an incredibly powerful ability for just stopping your opponent from charging. And if they can't charge, they can't fight. So
Yep.
It's got a Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury. Surprisingly, doesn't have an artifact of some kind boosting it, because usually you see that, right? Unfettered Fury is the crazy axe one that just blows everything up in a. Or no, that's Insensate Rage.
Unfortunately, this is the one that allows you to pile in 6 with demon units.
The whip.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. Piling in 6 inches with Scarbrand down there in the list makes perfect sense, because then you can run 6 Scarbrand and help him with his mobility problems. Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut is there to make the Skull Crushers battle line, and then he's got a whole bunch of Skull Crushers and a Bloodsecrator to. It still gives +1 attack, right?
Yes.
Good. This is just a fun looking Khorne list. You can smash into somebody and you can control melee. If it's got some tricks, it's got bodies, it's got good damage output with Scarbrand's always fun to see. So hopefully
he's really trying to countercharge you. So with the half charge, you don't make your charge, and then he'll just pile on his turn. Just absolutely just get into you. So it's very interesting. The Demon Prince is kind of the linchpin of the list. Once that goes away, then you can reliably get into the other things and fight him on your terms. But if you miss your charges, the Skull Crushers do D3 mortal wounds on the charge, and Scarbrand will kill a lot of things.
So I would have thought, given that how important the Demon Prince is, some kind of defensive artifact. He went with the Crimson Crown, which is that the that's not the Reaper's one, is it?
No, Crimson Crown's free CP
free command.
So you can just activate Bloodsick Ground without costing you basically anything.
I will mention for people who are playing against Bloodslick Ground, if you kill the Demon Prince before his turn starts, like this is a 10-drop list, if the Demon Prince is exposed and you snipe it, Bloodslick Ground cannot activate. It has to be activated in that player's turn. So if you can kill him before he activates it, even better. So
and with it being 10-drop, if you're less than that, you have a choice.
I would definitely go first against this list.
Yes,
for sure. That seems like the right choice. Even if I get doubled, because it's just melee units and they're not particularly fast. It's not like they're double moving pigs or anything. I feel like I could screen them out for a while. It's cool. We've got almost all the Chaos Gods, right? Almost all.
He is also a part of Team America, I will say. So he's a very, very good player as well. I think he plays in the same team or area as the LVO winner, Gavin Grieger. So
you're making me take a second look at it then.
Yeah, and Gavin has said that Roger is better than him. I don't know if that's just him being, magnanimous or what have you, but yeah, he's also a very, very good player. So.
Do you think he's trying to do something here with Tithe? Is that what's happening?
No, I think he's just playing a list that's a little bit more fun. Again, it's the counter charge, right? The half charge, and then he will destroy whatever you have into an attack position to kill his things. So
I'm having flashbacks.
And those
go ahead.
Those Skull Crushers are 3-up save, I believe.
Yeah, 5 wounds apiece, 3-up save.
Yep,
they're not easy to kill.
Pretty tanky. No,
hold the line makes perfect sense. No triumph because 2,000 points. Yep. Next up, Sean Allen. Finally, another Stormcast list. That's not me. It's another Gardas list. It's called Gardas and the Stormkeep Bros Revision. Missed out on a number, maybe. Sean's from the Backwoods Meta team. And I assume he's playing Stormkeep based on how the list looks and the fact that it's in the name.
Yes.
It's a fair assumption, right? But it should have been noted down. But unlike that first list, this is a 1-drop it's more streamlined, right? It doesn't have that extra unit of Storm Drakes in here. It went for 4 Fulminators, 6 Long Strikes. It's going to rely on those 2 units to kill the enemy army, while your Vindictors count as a lot of models on objectives. And if you kill them in melee, they're going to swing back and kind of do like trade-up damage, which is nice.
Yep.
The Knight Heraldor is an interesting choice. Very interesting.
He doesn't have the run and charge.
Nope.
Blowhorn anymore.
Doesn't really have anything. It just does damage around terrain.
Maybe because he's a totem. That's the only thing.
You don't really need a totem. Every Stormcast unit can issue orders to itself. So totem's irrelevant. Totem's actually downside in Stormcast because your opponent might have a bonus against it.
Yeah, and the Lord Relictor is already a Lord, so a lot of those
Hmm.
Thunderbolt Volley and stuff is already 18. So
Hmm. I
yeah,
think the Lord Relictor is also a totem, and he's the general. So like, there's no reason for any of this. Um, I think what I would have done here is, again, I would have shaved down the Vindictor points, and I would have
yep,
added in, at the very least, what I would have done is I would have shaved off 5 Vindictors for 5 Liberators, and I would have
yep,
upgraded the Knight Heraldor to a Knight Incanter. Because that way
yes,
you have
the
a
spell
spell
scroll.
scroll and another spell cast, either Celestial Blades.
Yeah,
Because
Mystic Shield.
this list doesn't
Yeah,
have any magic, and Fulminators really, really love buff spells. They are just a stat brick, and your opponent knows it, and they can kill them if you don't have Mystic Shield or All Out Defense, which this list doesn't
mm,
have. Hunters, so they
hmm
can be roared. So
hmm
I would say this is like the bog standard Stormcast castle list, though, right? This is Hallow Strike
mm,
pretty much without little variation.
to a T. Yeah,
I would personally go for more value, right? Because the cool thing about Stormcast is we've got the range, especially shooting power, to go first or second. If my opponent
hmm
forces me to go first, great. If they don't, great. We have cheap disposable bodies. Some armies don't, right? It's really weird that an elite army like Stormcast has cheap disposable units, but we do. Uh, yeah, it's really weird that other like Fire Slayers don't. Their cheapest unit's 125 points for 5 models. Like it's
yeah,
not great.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, looks good. Pretty much everything we said about the previous Stormcast Hallowed Knights list applies here.
hmm It's just not in the in between of the Drake. It's just 4
Mm-hmm.
Fulminators
It's
and a War
more it's
Frog.
more
Yeah.
focused. It could be even more focused, right? Like those
Yep.
Vindictor blocks, I think you can cut those away.
Yep. Sure.
But it's Stormkeep, so there's more value in it than the Scions version. But
The priest.
oh, I should mention this. Going back to this one for a second here. Because it's not Scions, this list instantly loses to any other shooting list. This auto loses to the teleporting snake list. This auto loses to the Scion shooting list. Because
Yep.
the Raptors are super fragile, they just die to a stiff breeze. Even with Guardians protecting them, they're only 12 wounds with a 5-up ward. Very easy
Yep.
to kill.
18. Yeah, 18 wounds.
Yeah, not hard to do 18 wounds at range for a lot of armies.
No, and you don't even need to fully destroy them. If you kill 2 or 3 of them, they just cuts the output quite heavily, and then you're relying
Especially,
on rally to bring them back.
yeah, good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
Especially this list doesn't have anything to stop spells, right? So Kairos, if he gets in
Mm,
range, um, the Warsong Revenant, there's all kinds of things at this tournament so far that can just reach out and do damage with mortals. And
for sure.
Raptors are 240 points for 6 wounds. Like
Yeah.
mortals are
Yeah.
really brutal against them.
Yeah.
So looking at Sean Murray here with another Big Yellers list. You started a
hmm
trend, but this one's very different. You want to run
Yes.
us through this one?
Sure. So the Bane backbone, obviously with Big Yellers, is it unlocks the Bolt-Boys' battle line. So he has 2 units of 6. He doesn't have the big 9 that I have and that Danny has. The Swamp Caller Shamans will babysit those. The Sludge Raker Beasts, obviously with Super Sneaky and Eye Pebble allows you to move him in range and affect the board. He does have 2 units of Slittas as a screen. The Kill a Boss on Great Gnash Tooth is incredibly fast and is actually the tankiest model you have because it's a 3-up save on 10 wounds and moves 10 inches as opposed to the rest of your army that moves 5 to 6 inches and has a 4-up save. The Break a Boss has the Fast Stun, so he's 5-inch going to 10-inch, so not incredibly quick. And then you have Gobsprak. Gobsprak knows the full range of spells. The Kruleboyz actually have a really, really good spell lore in Choking Mist with the -1 attack, Stop Your Run, Nasty Hex to turn off ward saves. You have the Sneaky Miasma, which allows you to double move a monster. And then you also have Black Mist, which you never take because the rest of the spell lore is good, but basically you roll 6 dice, and if you roll over the save characteristic of the unit you're targeting, it's 1 mortal wound. So in a high save meta, that thing is going to do 4 to 5 mortal wounds pretty reliably.
Yep. Unfortunately, a lot of those high save things are Kragnos and Drakes, which
Yeah,
ignore
so
spells.
you ignore spells. So his list is much more of a balanced approach than what Danny and I are running. He has a punch in the heroes, and then he has the shooting from the Bolt Boys to bring you closer. It's a much more traditional Kruleboyz list. The issue with a list like this, and the issue with Kruleboyz as a whole, without Kragnos, is you don't have a very, very strong anvil. Everything in this army is 6 or 5 up saves, except for that Gnash Tooth. And that's only 10 wounds on a 3 up save.
Mm-hmm.
So
no,
it's going to fall. Yeah.
You can make an army with just screens. You don't need an anvil per se, right? Like you don't need a wall,
Correct.
right? You
Correct.
can just screen your way to victory. But the problem is that Kruleboyz are also kind of elite in terms of point costs, right? Like if you start bringing Gut Rippers and just use them as disposable, like they're too expensive for that.
Yeah, 180 points is too expensive, and the Hobgrots don't affect the board.
Right.
Again, you can spam Hobgrots, quite a few Hobgrots to screen and play the movement game, retreating them and the like. But they're not gonna do any damage, and so your opponent can effectively just ignore them.
Does this list have a melee hammer unit of any kind? Maybe the Gut Rippers? Not even.
The Sludge Raker. The Sludge Raker is a unit that people always sleep on, but it does so much damage.
Really?
Incredible amounts of damage. Yeah.
I'm guessing you would switch your Swamp Kalla to that unit the turn you're charging in with him, or do you just keep your
correct? Yeah.
Even without it, it just does a ton of damage, or
yeah. So it's I think 12 or 13 attacks in total if you add everything together. And everything's 2 or 3 damage. And then on 6s, there'll be 3 or 4 mortal wounds. And if you use the Swamp Kalla, it'll be 5 and 6s. So let's say a third, the 12 will be 4. 4 times 3 is 12 mortal wounds. Plus, it does have rend as well. So
now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you use the Swamp Kalla and the Sludge Raker together, it doesn't double up. So like if you get a 5, you don't get the extra mortal wounds from the Sludge Raker.
Correct. Yeah. It's only the 6.
Okay.
It's only unmodified 6s. Yeah, so it does do quite a bit of damage, but the thing is, if you're relying on 5s and 6s, so if you don't get any of those, it's only -1, -2 rend on the 3 damage. So it can still do some work, but it is 315 points. So
it looks like the obvious thing to shoot once you're done with the Bolt Boys, right? And then then the list is just done. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
Or if they're covered in mud and something, right? Like I don't think the Snatcher Boss can go in mud. I think it's
only non-hero, non-monster.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. Looks a lot more balanced than the other list. More bodies. You can see that it's got 126 wounds, 48 models. It can play objectives better. It's not. It looks like it's trying to adapt to this redundancy meta. Let's call it.
Yep, I would agree. There's not a failure point in the list. Like a big failure point.
Tell me about Gobsprakk. How come nobody's using Gobsprakk right now, aside from this list?
The reason. So I actually like Gobsprakk in a big wall list as opposed to a Kruleboyz list. Oddly enough, in that Gobsprakk, while he has access to the whole spell lore, doesn't have any pluses to cast. So you're relying on 7s to cast your spells and not be unbound to affect the board. He has a 5 up save. And he's 14 wounds. Yeah.
Wow.
So
bad monster stats. What about with like a Rogue Idol? Because the Rogue Idol would give him +1 to cast, right?
Yep. Rogue Idol, and you throw him in the big wall. He's +2 to cast for everything.
Okay, so he's just bad in his own sub-faction.
The
leader of his own sub-faction. Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, he does have good unbinding presence in that he can once per game unbind on 3d6, and every time he unbinds, it's D3 mortal wounds to the wizard. And if it's unbound on a 10+, it's D6 mortal wounds against that wizard.
That's pretty rough.
So he does have a little bit of control in the magic phase. He just doesn't have. He's kind of more of a defensive magic piece as opposed to an offensive magic piece because he doesn't have that pluses to cast.
It would be so great if he could take Fast Stun and get like a hero phase move before his spells.
He could if you cast Sneaky Miasma, but that takes one of your casting, and it requires a spell. You're relying on a spell to get him up to that spell.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you could Fast Stun reliably, that would be great.
And he only casts 2 spells, and so he is 280 points, I believe, too. So
he's like a Toralon,
14. Yeah, 14 wounds, 5 up save. Yeah, he'll go down really quickly. No.
Well, it's cool to see 3 big yellers list at least.
It would be nice if we saw a non-big yellers list, honestly, because that's kind of the extent of Kruleboyz at the moment.
Yeah, gut rippers don't do it. They need to be
and then
much
you have to
cheaper.
take three units.
Mm-hmm.
That's what 460 points of your list just on your minimum battle line.
540.
Sorry, 540. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not good battle line. You're not getting much for those points.
No,
and like, ugh, man, it's rough.
Yeah.
Moving on here because it's been. Are you still good?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still good. Yeah.
Still awake? It's been 3
we'll
hours.
Finish these off. Yeah.
There's not much left.
We'll finish these off.
All right.
Yeah.
Flesh Eater Courts by Thomas Guan?
Zenon Guan. Yeah, Tom Guan. Yeah.
Guan. Okay, it's a hard G. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Flesh Eater Courts, also Blisterskin. So this is like Bill Souza's list that we talked about a week ago. Feels like.
Yeah.
Battle Regiment and another Battle Regiment. Again, like that other list, he's going for 2 drops. It doesn't have that 40 zombie block. It goes like more traditional Flesh Eater Courts, 2 big zombies. 2 big Terrorgeists. One of them's going to fight first flayers on the charge. Or not on the charge, sorry. That's Crystal Core. They don't have that. But yeah, Flaming Weapon, Gruesome Bite. It's damage. It's damage Flesh Eaters. A lot more flares, so everything's going to move up together at the beginning. And if you know how to beat Iron Jaws, Flesh Eaters are pretty similar, but they're slower.
Mm-hmm.
And they're less durable.
I would agree.
And less efficient. And
Tom is the coach to Team America, so he is, again, a good player. So he probably spoke to Bill.
I'm sure he's going to do really well at what he's doing, but I'm just talking about like the faction
correct
has an issue, right? What's going to catch people off guard anytime you play Flesh Eaters is the very particular mechanics of a double fight monster with a 3-inch bite.
3-inch reach, yeah.
Right? It took people a long time to adjust how to play against that, but once you figure it out, it's like, well, Flesh Eaters just don't do anything.
And the thing is, no matter how good a player you are, once you enact that game plan, like if your opponent is good as well in terms of skill level and understands what you're trying to do, there's no counter to the counter.
Mm-hmm. You just have to hope for a double, right? Like there's nothing Flesh Eaters can do to be like, oh, you're doing this strategy that beats me. I guess I'll do this. That just doesn't exist.
No, there's no counter to the counter.
Yeah, and that's why I like Bill's list so much, because once your opponent does that counter, you're not all in on it. You still have your zombie hordes controlling objectives, and you're hoping that you can buy enough time and do enough damage that your zombie hordes are going to pull you through past the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hold the line makes sense with that many crypt players, even though they're not. Like, you're either going to win hard or lose hard with this list. Inspired makes sense because you don't have any buffs going on. Again, this is another list without the 5-up ward spell, which might be on the second Terrorgeist. It didn't have another spell listed, so we'll see what that actually ends up being. Yeah. I'm sure he's a great player. I'm just, it's the faction that's limited. It's like when we talk about Sylvaneth, right? I'm sure these are great players, but the faction itself has limits.
I would agree.
And they need a new battle tome.
Yep.
Now we come to Yuri, who has 4 models with 140 wounds. You always love seeing Sons of Behemoth lists, right? It's like, oh, well, that was quick and easy. So it's Breaker Tribe, which does bonus damage if you're in terrain, which is a thing that Gatebreakers already do. So it's doubling up on that bonus damage. So instead of 3 damage, Ren 3 flail attacks, it's going to be 5 damage, Ren 3 flail attacks. So potentially 50 damage on Ren 3, which is insane. This is like, if you're used to playing against Gargants, this is not the typical Gargant list. Because Gargants are usually, I'm going to just play on objectives, and I'm going to kick them around, and I'm not going to engage with you, and it's your job to kill me, otherwise I win, right? This list doesn't do that. It also can kill you back.
For sure, yeah. And the interesting with Yuri as well is he switched to 3 drops with 2 enhancements to 1 drop.
Yes,
and that's because he identified a weakness in the Sons of Behemoth lists, in that a lot of people that are lower than 3 drops, 1 and 2s, usually just give him the first turn, try to double him, and win through that direction. So when you are a 1 drop like he is, there's a roll off against the other 1 drops, and you could potentially just give it away and do the exact same thing because
it does damage. This actually does damage.
Yeah, and they can rack up so much points because they have so many monsters as well.
Right.
So you put your opponent in a big back foot, and then at that point, once you've doubled them from 1 to 2, your opponent wants to get it back on 3, and so when they take it on 3, you burn an objective and increase your advantage even further.
Yeah, I can see that turn 3 swing turn. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it was obvious that you wanted more enhancements when the Amulet of Destiny existed and made your guys insanely tanky. Now it's not so obvious, and I think this is a natural pivot for Sons of Behemoth to include damage, because you were starting to lose objectives to 60 zombies, right? Like 30 models on objective with one Gargant is great, but 60 zombies or more. And if you're relying on Ren to do damage, like effective damage, zombies don't care. So this is a nice pivot. I'm pretty sure he did this almost just to counter his own brother, which is great. I'm really annoyed that the Gatebreakers, their rock throw kit does exactly 4 damage, which is what you need to kill a unit of Gryph-hounds that I'm spawning. That's really annoying to me. It's not an easy matchup. It doesn't look like it's a hard matchup, but it's not. It all depends on the battle plan, of course, right? He's got Beastmaster, Grand Strategy, makes sense. If you kill him, he loses anyway. So plus 5 wounds on one of the Gatebreakers with a flaming weapon, so potentially 6 damage. If you're in cover, he can kill a Dracoth with every swing. Ugh.
10 attacks.
Inspired, makes sense. What else is there to say? The War Stompers are... What do you think about the War Stompers in this? Given that he's going for double Gatebreaker, do you think one crack... they were the worst one. But they're anti-Horde, while the Gatebreaker is anti-Elite. So I thought maybe that's an interesting mix. Like, he's covering his bases.
I think the reason why he took them was they're lower in points, much lower in points. And so that's the only way you can fit 4 Mega Gargants if you're taking 2 Gatebreakers. Just how the points sit. Yeah.
And I'm not that familiar with their core battalion, so I'm guessing you can't take like some Man Crusher Gargants and still be 1-drop?
No, you're unable to do that. It's 4 megas,
Okay, so it's out of necessity
2 to 4.
then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Because those War Stompers don't even against Hordes, your Gatebreakers still do more damage. Because you're limited to 10 attacks, and it's 10 attacks
That's true.
On 2 damage, or 10 attacks at 3 damage. Yes, they hit better because they're 3s and 3s instead of 4s and 3s. But it's still limited by the amount of attacks. Now, if they didn't have a limit to the amount of attacks they did, they would be such a good horde killing.
What else do War Stompers do besides the horde attack? I can't. The Krakenator has the kicking thing.
Kick. Yeah. So they can pick out any point in the combat phase a model. It doesn't limit it at the start or at the end. So you could just do it after everybody's piled in. So you can potentially break people's coherency with the grip.
The throwing a model into another model thing.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, it's D6 plus 2, I believe, at the top bracket.
That seems really good against some armies because you have to.
But you have to double
wounds. So you can't do that against 6-wound Dracoths.
No, unfortunately, you cannot.
Thank small miracles. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. And Yuri's also an excellent player. I think he's one of the top, if not the top, ITC Gargants player. So
yeah, last season he was. Yeah.
So
by a country mile. Yeah.
He knows this army. Deceptively strong.
Yep.
And moving on to Zachary McComb, another Sylvaneth Gnarlroot with if you could have guessed it, Alariel, Warsong,
and the Warsong Revenant.
Kurnoth with bows. Where this one differs is that it's got Chronomantic Cogs, I'm guessing for another spell cast on the Warsong Revenant, and a Knight and Cantor, I'm guessing to stop other magic armies from doing what this list is trying to do.
For sure.
But we've pretty much talked about this archetype to death. This one is, it's even down 55 points. I feel like it could have added in another endless spell even. There's probably something he could have added.
He has three wizards, so he could have fit something. Yeah.
Prize sorcery makes sense. There's just not many bodies when you take Alariel. Everything we said about the previous ones applies here. It's almost the same list 3 times. If these are my first day matchups, I'd love it. The same list 3 times, like, oh yeah, I'm getting the reps in by the time I get to the third one.
For sure. Yeah, you're very practiced. Yeah.
I got nothing else to say about it. How about you?
No.
Okay. Sorry, Zachary. You got the Z in your name.
Yeah,
That's just
you
how it
have the
went.
Z in the name. Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing against you. Zach Aarons. I never asked him how to pronounce it.
Aarons, yeah.
Aarons.
Yeah.
Season of War.
My teammate.
So you guys, I guess, internally have been talking a lot about Kragnos. You put out a whole video about it, and
Yes.
Zach is trying a different approach. He's going with Kragnos and Ogors, trying to make the best of that. And he's got some interesting choices here that I want to run down. So he's still tried to go for as few drops as possible because I think he's recognized that people are either going 1 or 9. And when you're 5, you beat all the 9s, but you can still take some of the value from taking the 9s. You don't get the full value of like Warlord and Hunters, but you can get one of those, either Warlord or Hunters.
For sure.
And it looks like he's gone with Icebrow Hunter to get the cheapest possible Frost Saber battle line so that he can stuff in Kragnos and a Frost Lord and another Frost Lord, and then still has points left over for a Fire Belly, which has the Billowing Ash, which is the -1 hit aura. So it's going to charge you. It's going to hurt. Can you answer it? And it also has some tricks, right? Like the Icebrow Hunter comes in from reserve with some Frost Sabers. Yeah.
It's the same issue that the Flesh Eater Court army presents to you. Because of the 3d6 charge coupled with Kragnos, it does so many mortal wounds on the charge, blows up your screen, piles in 3, and I believe the Frost Lord spear is 3 inches as well.
Yeah, the horns are 2, but the spear is 3.
Correct.
His punches and kicks are 1, which is hilarious. Like little
so it is presenting you with the same problem. The thing with this list is it's 3 big monsters threatening you as opposed to 2 from the Terrorgeists.
And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. It's easier.
Yeah.
Each additional threat you put in your opponent, like 1 is easy, 2 is hard, 3 is like expert mode. Like you really have to be on the ball. You can't let them get in. That's how you play around it, right?
Yep. And the 3 Frost Lords as well are much more tanky than a Terrorgeist, in that they have a 3-up save and a 5-up after save, each one of those. Kragnos himself is a 2-up save with a 6-up. And the thing is that even if you get into combat, Metal Cruncher just says at the start of the combat phase, if you have a 2, 3, or 4-up save, just D6 mortal wounds to you.
You know, it doesn't have a 2, 3, or 4-up save. Gryph-hounds.
No, they don't.
They'll die to the charge, but because it's at the start of the combat phase, even if he piles into range, he won't be in range to Metal Crunch, my second screen, which is fine. This is the Kragnos in the Beastclaw Raiders, right? You mix those 2 archetypes together. This one, so many mortal wounds. 3 big threats is hard. That's hard to deal with. You have to deploy out of range, and the additional D6, sometimes the Frost Lords just get that extra couple inches that they need with it. So
so it's 15 inches plus the 3d6 charge.
It's rough. It's hard. It's like corner deployment, very fast, pretty much, right?
Yeah. And day 1 is all of the battle plans are the short way.
Yeah.
Or like long edge. Yeah. So
what's also interesting is the way he split up, because he could have put Kragnos in the battle regiment, but he chose not to. He actually chose to give Kragnos more information before he gets deployed, which is one of these little decisions that the competitive players make. Somebody who doesn't play at that level wouldn't see this kind of thing. But like when you go battle regiment, you give all the information away to your opponent, and if they can deal with that, if that's an advantage to them, then that's a big downside. Perfect deployments win this game, right? Like if your opponent has a fixed maximum threat range of 24 inches and you deploy 25 inches away, you won. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, he's identified Kragnos as probably his top threat, then the Metal Cruncher Frost Lord as his second, threat, and then the third one with Flaming Weapon, so that he's willing to give you the information on the third threat, but the second and the first are still shadowed, especially if you're 1-drop.
Yeah, so he can drop in like Icebrow Hunter. I think he can go reserve off the bat. You don't need anything on the table.
Correct.
So if he's playing against another battle regiment, he just null deploys 1,
Icebrow,
gets all the information he needs, and then puts the rest of his army in the right spot.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how some other armies, like I'm not sure how your army would deal with this. This is so much melee power in your face. Kragnos can't tank at all, especially not another Kragnos, right? That
so
is brutal.
It becomes a matchup of whose Kragnos charges the other Kragnos.
Yeah.
So
and his even if you charge his, his 2 Frostlords can then double charge on you.
Correct.
Probably all happening out of the threat range of your Bolt Boys, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I
It's tough.
play a more conservative game where I play the 27-inch bubble of my Bolt Boys,
Right.
and I don't put Kragnos in threat because he doesn't have the shooting to remove my 20 Hobgrots. Once he contacts them, he's he's committed. So what Zach is doing in that particular matchup is trying to double because he's going to blow up my Hobgrots, then get into me, and then I'm attempting for him to just not double me, so go into like lockwise step order. So
I'm
there's
attempting to not roll dice.
Yeah. So we're doing this like weird dance in that I don't want him to double me, or I just stay way outside the threat range, and when he does double me, his double is when he gets into me instead of the first turn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting matchup.
Andrew in the chat says BCR loves Kragnos Mightiest, makes Rightiest so much, and I agree. One thing ogres were or in particular Beastclaw was struggling with was they only counted as 10 models on an objective, and like that's just means nothing to Gargants or 60 zombies. I keep mentioning zombies; it's just on my mind. There's other things, right? But yeah, Kragnos having that extra piece of utility really helps round out one of this list's otherwise weak spots. Like if you just had like 2 more Stonehorns in here, like Beast Riders, this list wouldn't be as effective. Kragnos is better than 2 Stonehorn Riders.
Yep, I would agree. And 2 Stonehorn Riders are more expensive as well.
That's true. Yeah. Interesting to see what happens. Really hope I see this on day 2 instead of day 1 with those short deployments.
Yeah.
Oh boy. 18-inch. Really tough.
Yeah.
I hate castle deployments. They're like not castle, corner. I hate playing corner deployments.
Except in this sense.
When you have to, you have to. It's just not it's not as much fun, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that's all of the list. So let's take a look at some stats because I thought this was kind of interesting to kind of break it all down. We've got, I think we talked before the show, we're missing like 3 factions from the game. Slaanesh is gone. What else are we missing? Fire Slayers is not present, and Lumineth?
Night Hunt. So we're missing 4.
4. Yeah. But there's almost like 30 factions in Age of Sigmar. So missed 26 out of 30, just whatever napkin math we're doing.
Yeah.
Really, really good. I have never seen a GT with this much diversity before.
Yep.
It's really encouraging. Maybe some people are just playing weaker factions as a challenge. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it's good to see them. It would be like I don't want to get to a point where we just see Flesh Eaters and Skaven everywhere like we did for like 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Part of that problem.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
Oh boy, those thankful lists. Imagine Unleash Hell back then. That would have been.
I would win a lot more.
Those Plague Monks too.
Yep.
So we've got 14 Order armies, which makes sense. Order's the most populated.
Yeah, it's not.
And then there's usually it's usually like I'd say half Order, a third Chaos, and then the other remainder is split between Death and Destruction, something like that.
Yeah,
right? It's like maybe not quite that, but whatever. It's really interesting to see Destruction so rampant right now, and it's not just because of Kragnos, because there's only 2 Kragnos lists.
Yep.
Right. So it's really interesting to see so many Big Yellers and the Bone Splitters list. It's small sample size, it's only 30 lists, whatever, but it's still just interesting to see. I've never seen that much Destruction compared to Chaos. Like it's usual to see this much Order. Not usual to see Chaos and Destruction this way.
For sure.
Looking through all the lists, the average model count was 44, which is way higher than most Stormcast lists.
Yep.
But the median was 39, right? So the center value was 39, which means there's a lot more on top than there are. The big lists have a lot, right? But there's not that many.
They skew the math.
Yeah. Whereas the average wounds have the opposite approach, where the average is 113 and the median is 104, which means again. The math is skewed because there's a couple really big ones, or actually there's more really big ones. The big ones are big. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Levon, who's doubling that.
Yeah, he's more than double the average, which is all right. Thanks, man. My list is kind of deceptive because I didn't include the Gryph-hounds, so that does add.
And you
8.
don't.
Yeah. No, because Storm Drakes. There's only 2 lists with Storm Drakes.
And only 4 total.
I was really torn whether I just wanted to do pure Night Judicators or mix in some crossbows. Because I was worried about Storm Drakes. Night Judicators are really good. Ren 3 shooting's really good against Storm Drakes. And then there's only 4 Storm Drakes total after seeing like 70 at LVO or something absurd.
Yep.
But that was a bigger
I
event.
played against
But
15 of them myself.
yeah,
So
you could go a whole weekend without seeing one Storm Drake against you.
yeah,
that can happen today.
Yeah,
or
for
this
sure.
weekend. There's still a decent amount of Fulminators. 4 lists are using them. Only 14 total, right? There's not that many. So
4, 4, 4, 2. Yeah.
yeah, despite Order being so high up there, you would expect more Storm Drakes given what we're experiencing. Maybe Canadians are either really good or really bad at the game, I think is what we're saying. Either we're totally correct and we're adapting to what the meta is going to be, because if somebody brought Storm Drakes, they would have just bounced off a bunch of these lists in here, or we're all terrible and nobody knows what we're talking about, and there's no way to know. So
I think it's a mixture of both. Well, not that we're terrible. It's a weird thing in that I think everybody is so, like, a lot of the people who are going are very, very tuned into the meta of what's happening overall in the world, and so I think they were either expecting that there was going to be a lot of it, played lists that can counter it, and the lists that would normally take those Storm Drake Guard or Fulminators are expecting people to counter them, and so decided not to. And so there was this weird meta game in the back end of things, but it ended up just skewing everything anyways.
But that's fine. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's why we got so much diversity. We've got like tons of lists that are unorthodox, right? I really like it. This shows the metagame is changing and evolving, which is good. People don't want stale things. They don't want a game where it's like, why am I going to play Age of Sigmar this weekend? Because there's Drakes everywhere. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do something else. But it's not the case, thankfully. 2 lists with Kragnos. I thought there was going to be more. After seeing
I was surprised as well.
I thought 7 destruction lists, 6 of them are going to be Kragnos.
Just actually 2. God models in and of itself. I'm surprised that there's only 4 in totality. And 1 is bringing 2.
Yep. 1 list has 2 of those. 0 Be'lakor. I thought if the meta's evolving to have lots of bodies, then Be'lakor lists seem really good against that. Same with Nagash, right? Night Haunt list can do pretty well against that.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting to see the decisions everybody's made. And I'm really looking forward to the event.
And again, like what we said at the beginning, look at the number of 1-drop and 2-drop lists there are.
It's like your the mode here, the most common is 1-drop, right?
Yeah.
Then it's 2, because 2 wants to beat everything except the 1, or you just can't, and you're trying to get as low as possible.
Yeah.
But then it's like 9 plus. Or those guys in the middle, the 5 and 6 who are taking advantage of that. So definitely
so play the odds.
Gap. Yeah. Going first is just so important right now for so many armies. And that's why I just don't play those kind of lists. I like to be able to go first. You just
don't play that game.
Yeah. It's like when everybody was fighting first, I said, no, I'm just going to shoot you.
Yep.
Just adapt.
I mean, in competitive games, you always want to reduce the amount of variance. So if everybody's 1-drop, if your whole game plan is to go first or give away first in that sort of instance, if you guys are both 1-drop, it's a 50-50 roll. And so you're not even guaranteed to accomplish your game plan if you're going 1-drop.
Right.
Against all of these 1-drops. And so at one point in the 5-round tournament, you're going to fail that die roll, except obviously if you don't. But you can't bank on not failing one of those die rolls against the other 1-drops, and then that's the game you're going to lose.
There's a reason the same players consistently go 5-0, 4-1. It's because they are reducing variance, right? There is a dice random element to this game, but the most consistent players are winning because they are trying to reduce the variance. And they can play either way. I think that's a big part of it. So
for sure.
Yeah. Carl, thank you very much for coming on, man. 3.5 hours.
I mean, we had lots of thoughts. We had lots of thoughts on lots of lists, and it'll be interesting to see how all of these good players pilot their lists. I'm sure we're missing a whole bunch of secret sauce in some of the lists.
There could be more people coming in too. There's a couple people dropped, so maybe some totally wild card lists come out of nowhere and
for sure
rock everybody's socks. So
for sure,
it's going to be a good time, man. I'm looking forward to it, and we will definitely have to go out for some pub food and afterwards.
for sure. All
right. Thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully this was useful. Maybe we went too far in depth. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye.
That's that. We are done.